This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a Thursday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson with you from Saskatoon, following the Canadian Olympic curling trials, and of course the trials and tribulations of the Winnipeg Jets. Yikes! Shutout loss last night in Columbus, 3 straight regulation losses, and we may have a reappearance of the panic button on WST. We'll get Michael Remis in here in just a second. Big show, though, coming up. Lots to get to. Ken Wiebe on the road with the Winnipeg Jets will join us coming up in around 45 minutes or so. We'll also get ready for the Canadian Football League playoffs on the weekend and talk about all the Bombers that are up for league awards with Derek Taylor out in Regina. And to finish off the program a little later on, we will talk about a good news story here in hockey in this local city. That, of course, is the Manitoba Moose and the Winnipeg Ice. Brian Munns is going to join us tomorrow. Ice winning last night to go 20-1 on the season, the number 1 team in the Canadian Hockey League. And we'll get ready for the Moose on the weekend with Daniel Fink coming up a little later on the show. Obviously, we're going to start off with last night's game and the plight of the Winnipeg Jets as they get into their first real funk of the season. But before that, do want to thank all of our great sponsors: Vita Health, Fresh Market, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Not Autocorp, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course, our friends at Coolbet Canada. Speaking of Coolbet, Chris and I just fired up a video and some content for this afternoon's big draw on the men's side. And we will do a Princess Auto curling report. So many possibilities on the women's side heading into tonight's 7 p.m. draw, with still the potential of 3 Manitoba teams being the final 3 teams in the playoffs. Let's get Remis in here and start things off. And Reem, you're already seeing people both on social media last night and today in the chat saying, where is the panic button? Because they want to press it. Holy smokes, the struggles of the Winnipeg Jets continue. This team cannot buy a goal. The special teams are killing them right now. And another regulation loss heading into 2 very difficult back-to-back games tomorrow afternoon in Minnesota and Saturday night against the Calgary Flames. And, of course, quick programming note, tomorrow's show, for those of you that join us live on YouTube, will be at 11 o'clock a.m. We'll go 11 to 1 live on YouTube, and we'll focus more on the weekend. Pat Steinberg's going to join us from Calgary, setting up that game, as well as a lot of football content with the playoffs coming up in the Canadian Football League. But, Remo, what's going on? And how did we get here? Things were so good a week ago for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I see people joking on social media. Maybe ESPN was onto something with their power rankings.
They called their shot.
They could see the future. We were like, ESPN, you're so stupid. Can't you see the Jets are top of the Central? How things can change a week later. It is Thursday. It would have been after the Tuesday win against Edmonton.
Did they do a power poll this week? I mean, the Jets have probably gone up, up a number of spots despite not winning. A reverse correlation.
I'm not sure. Yeah, the Jets, I mean, they're 3rd in the Central, tied with St. Louis, but you'd like to think they'd have a couple more of those games back. They've had some, losses when they've played well, wins, they pulled out of their ass, like against, the Ehlers one in Anaheim where he had the 2 goals. So, I mean, on the whole, I think you have to be impressed, but you've had the opening slide where I did have the panic button out, and now you have a 4-game losing streak where I say that I'm not going to bring out the panic button. Is there a concern button? I mean, the team has scored 4 goals in the last 4 games. The power play is in an 0 for 21 slump. The penalty kill is among the bottom in the league. 5-on-5, things seem to be going all right, but I think you have to be concerned that your top guys aren't going, and your special teams are pretty. Again, the power play's in a slump, and penalty kill consistently been among the bottom in the league. So I think there's some concern, and we're waiting to see what the lines are. I know they did power play, but we can get to today's skate that's going on right now in St. Paul. But as far as last night goes, I mean, Shutout again has making these goalies, Demko, Jari, Skinner,
Stewie Skins,
Skinner, and now Elvis Merzlikins with the shutout. These guys are putting up Vezina caliber performances against the Jets.
Well, and speaking of Vezina caliber performances, the thing that really sucks about this run right now is they are wasting some brilliant goaltending performances by Connor Hellebuck. Game after game, he's given up 2 goals, and you're not getting wins. And it's a complete lack of offensive production right now by the hockey club, and it is strange. I mean, I will say this: they had 36 shots on goal last night. They haven't helped themselves on the power play. That's a major issue, and we'll talk about that with Ken. They still have a hard time killing penalties, but at 5-on-5 for the most part, and I know there's been a huge conversation about Svechnikov and Wheeler and the switch that happened coming out of the Los Angeles game. When you break down what that line has been doing, I will admit I thought Wheeler had a tougher game last night, and I think we're seeing some regression right now, at least over the course of these last couple games. But I think a lot of guys are frustrated right now, but maybe none more than the captain. But it's not like at times last season or the season before where the team just simply wasn't generating and kind of getting by on goaltending and special teams. It's the exact opposite right now. The goaltending's still good. The special teams have been brutal. And at 5-on-5, they are creating a lot, but just nothing's going in the net. But I did think that we saw last night, Reem, in some ways maybe a carryover from the third period of Pittsburgh. They did a lot of things, but it didn't seem like there was the real push in and around the net. I mean, they were getting some shots on net. Elvis Merzlikins made some great saves, and maybe it just takes one to sort of open the dam. But there's a lot of guys squeezing their sticks pretty tight, and the frustration was so evident. I mean, no more so than Josh Morrissey, of all people, taking a two-hander to Texier after the empty net goal went in. He, by the way, was fined $5,000 today. When Josh Morrissey is taking, basically what amounts to a cheap shot in frustration, things are bad for the hockey club. And it seems like it really came to a head last night. It's going to be fascinating to see how this team plays tomorrow afternoon in the Twin Cities against the Wild. And then on Saturday night against the Calgary Flames, who have been one of the best teams and the best stories in the Western Conference this year.
It's so funny. We talk about Josh Morrissey as this mild-mannered guy, and I think we got to shed that label. He's got a mean streak. I remember him cross-checking Eric Stahl in the neck in the playoffs. I believe he had an incident in the playoffs last year as well. He seems like so nice, this quiet guy. He's Scholastic Player of the Year, and when he gets in, watch out for Josh when he's angry, because that was a really unnecessary cheap shot, and he's kind of lucky. He only got fined $5,000, not a suspension. Blatant disregard for another player's safety. That seems out of character for Josh, but I guess we've seen from him before. I do have Paul Maurice's media availability from post game if you want.
Yeah, you know what? Let's hear a little bit of the coach, because a lot of questions and no answers that I think will satisfy everybody right now. But the coach hit the microphone after the game, and this is a little bit of what Paul Maurice had to say about the third consecutive regulation loss and a shutout at the hands of Seabus last night.
One sec, I'm just going to set it up so you can hear it when I hit play, and let's go.
4 games and 4 goals. Is that bad luck, great goaltending, bad shooting, combination of everything?
Yeah. I didn't feel, wasn't overly worried about our offensive game, believe it or not, even coming in tonight, but we're going to have to find a different way to get pucks to the net. We get chances every night, but that's always a dangerous thing to say. We had our chances, right? So, it has to be a part of our game. I'd like to see us defend better. I thought tonight we didn't. I thought in the other games, they've got a good rush team and they're going to generate, but I didn't think we need to give up. So tonight was the first night I thought we were looking for offense at the expense of our defense. So that's the only time I've been concerned about it. I mean, we're in one offensively, right? We got good shooters that are missing nets on good opportunities, and there's going to be a stretch where the puck doesn't want to go for you and you're banging it around. I thought their guy had to make some saves tonight. We did get a little more traffic, but we're not. I'd be lying if I'm not worried about our offense, but I know it's there. I'm not worried that how are we ever going to score another goal. It's there, but we can't have a defensive game like that coupled with our offensive struggles right now.
And Scooter Skinner, and since then it has been an absolute offensive power outage right now. So for where I'm sitting, I mean, I think everything is on the table, minus splitting up Dubois and Kyle Connor. I think those two guys need to be together, and whether they move Svechnikov back to that spot, whether they try something else, I'm not sure they're doing Blake Wheeler any favors right now with him on that line, considering the heat that he's taken right now, the pressure on him right now. And, Ken's got an interesting piece today on Sportsnet.ca, for the argument of making that switch back and what it might be able to do for Blake Wheeler individually. But, listen, it's not about one player right now. It's about getting the team going, and it's about, having some good feelings happen, offensively for this team. And maybe it just takes a goal or two to go in. It's amazing what a little bit of success will do to a team to get some momentum. But right now, this team's beating its head against the wall offensively right now, despite the fact that they are shooting the puck on net. But as I tweeted last night, they're making every goalie they're playing right now look like Marty Brodeur in his prime, and that is not good. Now, speaking of that line switch, Ken Wiebe did ask Coach about that and whether he would be considering moving Svechnikov back to a line where, he did enjoy some success alongside Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor earlier in the year before the switch made when the Jets struggled in the LA game a couple Saturdays ago. Here's how that sounded.
Yeah. That's a possibility. I don't think that they've lost offensive chances because of it. I don't think their numbers are going down. Casey had 19 shots in the two Edmonton games, so it's like you only had 5 tonight. So I don't think that's there. That's not a place I'm looking right now.
So it was an interesting response from the coach, because he initially said, that's a possibility, and then sort of explained that he's not really thinking about that because, the offense and the chances has been there. But at the same time, in the same presser after the game, said that, we've, said that there's been a lot of chances, but they're not going in right now, and I think something might need to change. Listen, today at practice in the Twin Cities, they did work on a number of things, including the power play. And we are going to get to the power play because that has been, as much as the penalty kill has been an Achilles heel at time and has cost the Winnipeg Jets points at times this year, the lack of success on the power play has been a massive story as the Jets go through this power outage over the course of the last week or so. Today's power play units are as follows: Pionk, Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor, and Ehlers, and then Morrissey and Schmidt together, along with Kopp, Stastny, and Dubois. And Riley Nash was rotating in Stastny's spot. It was interesting. Dave Minuk, I believe, of Illegal Curve, popped out the success rates of the power play with Stastny, and since Stastny's been injured. And almost this power outage, to be honest, Remo, has coincided with Paul Stastny's absence. Now, I think it's unrealistic for Winnipeg Jet fans to expect Paul Stastny to come back into the lineup and just poof, everything is back to the way it was before when the team was playing well and scoring a lot of goals. But certainly his addition into the lineup, I think, is going to be a positive for special teams and for the power play in particular. But I think it also gives Maurice maybe a little bit of an out as far as what he's going to do with his top lines, how they're going to look, and where the captain's sitting in it right now. I don't think for a minute that Blake Wheeler isn't capable of more. I don't think for a minute that Blake Wheeler, you probably should have had some more points over the course of these last few games. But when you look at the way that the struggles that the team had, and he's having in particular, especially last night, I almost think that it would be a disservice to the captain to continue riding him as hard as he's been, putting him in those situations where everything gets magnified more and more and more when things don't go well. And fairly or unfairly, there's a lot of people pointing the blame game straight at the captain of the Winnipeg Jets, when he's far from the only guy that's struggling offensively right now. But it is what it is, Remis. And I know you've mentioned this before, and a lot of fans have had, why the heck did you were changing something that was working? I mean, I will say this. Anyone that was at that game against the Los Angeles Kings a couple Saturdays ago knows that, there a lot of things weren't working. It felt a lot like the Islander game the previous Saturday or a couple Saturdays earlier, where, the Jets never really had much control of the puck in the offensive zone outside about 3 feet from the boards. Like, that hasn't been the case over the last little while. But again, this is a results-based business, and the results right now for the Winnipeg Jets offensively are non-existent. And much like the LA game, that is the time when things get switched up. They're doing it on the power play right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if, whether it's to start the game tomorrow or as the game proceeds, if things don't go well right out the gate, that we do see some significant changes in the lineup. And I'll tell you what, the other thing that I'm going to bring up with Ken, and it's not the first time we've talked about, maybe some different personnel. There's a lot of guys with the Manitoba Moose that are playing well right now, and we're going to talk to Dan Fink about that later on. And to me, those things should be options, although, as has been well documented, there are some very significant cap challenges for the Winnipeg Jets right now that maybe makes that much harder to accomplish in a short term, to bring up a number of bodies and change up the way the roster looks.
Ah, shit. Sorry, I was muted. Fuck. Anyway, so what I was saying, it's a really bad start here. Really bad start here for me, muting myself during these clips and forgetting to unmute. And yeah, so I was saying, you go back, to the games and against LA, they have a bit of a struggle, and then they put Wheeler back with Dubois and Connor. Meanwhile, for a couple of games, that line had been rolling. It's still among the top line for the Jets this season in expected goals. When they switch Wheeler and they go with, they win that game, and then they keep it for the Edmonton game. But since that first Edmonton game, they haven't scored. I know you can say they've had chances, they've looked good, but one line had results and one line didn't. So when Ken asked Maurice after the game, are they going to put Svechnikov? Are they considering it? Why wouldn't you? That line had success. They put the puck in the net. It's been the top line for the Jets for, again, expected goals. So, I'm not saying that's the reason why all of a sudden you make one change, team chemistry's ruined, and then for whatever reason
I'll
you
say
forget
this.
how to score.
If you want to quote expected goals, we talked to Murat earlier this week. The expected goals actually have been better with the Wheeler version of this line, at least up until last night. I'm not including last night's game into it because I think that might have taken a little bit off of it. But we can talk about analytics, and we can talk about chances, and we can talk about the fact that they're getting their fair share of games. But at a certain point, something's got to change, and, it's going to start with one goal. And, I think there certainly is a very compelling argument that either going back to that or having a different look in the next couple of games might be time for that for the Winnipeg Jets, because, if you don't do that when you're in this sort of an offensive slump of results, maybe not chances, when do you do it? And all of that will be on the table when we talk to Ken a little bit later on the program. A couple quick things because we're going to bring in Derek Taylor and then a little bit of football, and then really focus in on the Jets as well as the Manitoba Moose a little later on. CFL awards finalists are out today. Zach Collaros, Adam Bighill, Stanley Bryant, and Mike O'Shea all up for awards. Collaros for the most outstanding player, Bighill for the most outstanding defensive player. By the way, Collaros going up against CFL rushing leader William Stanback with the Alouettes for MOP. For the DPOY, it's Sony Lawrence going up against Adam Bighill. Stanley Bryant for the O-line, and Ryan Dinwiddie up against Mike O'Shea for Coach of the Year. But I think what everyone in Winnipeg talking about over the course of the last hour, a great honor for Bob Irving, who will call his final game at IG Field in the West Final on December 5th. Bob will be celebrated as he should be, and Bob is going in to the Ring of Honor for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and I can't imagine a player, a non-player more deserving of being a part of Blue Bomber history than Bob Irving certainly is.
Oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. With the organization for what, 50 years? Is it 48? Something silly. So yeah, I mean, you hear his voice, you think Blue Bomber football. You know, he's gonna have, you know, his last game December 5th. That's currently scheduled. I mean, we'll wait and see what happens. What happens. But yeah, I mean, no-brainer. Put him on the Ring of Honor. Well deserved, and deserving all the send-offs. So that's great.
Yeah, so we'll get DT in here in a minute, and chop it up, talk a little bit about this West Semi that's coming up between the Riders and the Calgary Stampeders. Get his thoughts on the Bombers going into this situation. I'm fascinated about this. This West Semi is going to be a really, really interesting football game, and I think you can make a compelling argument on either side that that either the Stamps or the Riders will be coming to Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers on the 5th of December. But while we wait for DT to join us, couple other things last night. I mentioned just we're going to be talking to Brian Munns tomorrow on the program, which I'm very much looking forward to. If you want a good news story, if you're a frustrated Jet fan right now and the team's driving you crazy with the lack of success over the course of the past week, spend a bit more time paying attention to the Winnipeg Ice, because they won again last night, blowing out Swift Current. They are now 20-1 on the season, and they're doing it, in very impressive fashion against the best teams in the Western Hockey League and the teams that they should beat. I mean, they're going out and doing what they need to do night in and night out. And James Patrick, the job that he's done, the talent that this team has amassed over the last few years through some lean years. I mean, we knew this team had the potential of being good. I don't know if anyone could have imagined that they would be this good, but 20-1 on the season right now. It's a pretty special hockey team right now, and we're definitely looking forward to having Munzie on the program coming up tomorrow. All right, DT is going to join us in just a second. Big thanks to our sponsors at Vita Health Fresh Market. 7 locations in Winnipeg, and tomorrow is the Black Friday sale. Save up to 60% on some of your favorite products, plus a great gift card deal. Buy a $100 Vita Health gift card and get a $10 gift card for free. Prairie Naturals, normally $24.99. Black Friday pricing just $19.99. Prairie Naturals bone broth protein, a 300 gram tub, on for just about 59% off. Great deals on NRC, Health First Zinc Citrate, Manitoba Harvest Natural Hemp Hearts, half price. Bragg's Apple Cider Vinegar, Sober Carpenter non-alcoholic beer. Normally those are $3.49. 2 for $4. That might be a great purchase to get when you're ready to entertain for the holidays. And the Craw flavored sparkling water 8 packs, normally $5.99. On sale tomorrow, 2 for $8. Deals are available at all 7 Vita Health locations. The sale is Friday, November 26th only, while quantities last. And of course, you can find out more. Details are on the website at myvita.ca. Our friends at Culligan Water, of course, are also taking good care of Winnipeg and Southern Manitoba. Family owned for 65 years in the business, featuring everything to do with water. They are the experts, after all. Softeners, filters, bottled water, coolers, drinking water systems, whole home systems, not to mention citywide water delivery services, as well as commercial industrial water products and solutions. It's all there. 1200 Sargent Avenue, 694-5180. And you can find out more at drinkculligan.com. And the snow is here, which means that many of you guys are getting the sleds ready to get out but you might need a battery. And of course, Manitoba Battery has batteries for everything, not just automotive, not just autos. $65 to $75 most batteries, but whatever your sled is, they'll be able to get you powered up. And don't forget, for the rest of the month of November, Manitoba Battery thanking the frontline and healthcare workers by paying the taxes on any automotive battery for those that help us get through the challenges of COVID. Find out more at manitobabattery.com, 1026 Logan Avenue, or give them a call, 204-783-8787. All right, let's welcome in the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Derek Taylor, to the program. DT, great to catch up again. How are you?
I'm good, Huss. How are you, man?
I'm awesome. I'm out in your neck of the woods, up in Saskatoon for the week, enjoying the Canadian Olympic curling trials. And I will admit, I've been wearing a bit of blue and gold around, getting some side eyes from people, but a lot of excitement, but I think a lot of nerves right now amongst Rider Nation going into this week. I mean, you're talking to Rider fans on a daily basis with your show in the cage. What's the mood that you're hearing around Riderville getting ready for a big matchup with Calgary to determine who gets to come to the peg?
Here's the best way I've found to describe it. If you've been to like the Grand Canyon, they have that big glass horseshoe where you can walk out over the canyon and look down and through this glass floor and go, oh, wow, look at this. I'm so far up. But some people, though that thing is totally safe, some people walk on that and go, it's glass, I'm going to die. I get very nervous about it. I don't know that my footing is secure. I feel like that's where Rider fans are right now. They're the favorite against this Calgary team. They're playing the game at home. They've shown they can beat them, but there's this nervous, I think we're going to figuratively die because Calgary's got something against us. It's an awkward position to be in because even after 14 games, we don't entirely know what to make of this Riders team.
You know, in a lot of ways, the Riders sort of allowed Calgary back into the season with those 2 wins. I mean, they had that 3-game, I believe they played 3 times in 4 weeks. And Calgary was really on the mat at that point. We were wondering, who's it going to be? Edmonton? Was it going to be Calgary that might sort of get their season together? Well, it sure as hell wasn't the Elks, as we well know. But they did win those 2 games against the Riders. And then in the final game, the Riders got one over on Calgary. I mean, what do you remember about that season series, and what can that tell us about the matchup coming up on the weekend?
Well, through those 3 games, Bo Levi Mitchell was really poor. Like that was the real surprise in that one. He threw 6 interceptions over those 3 games, and we thought, how are they winning these first 2 games? Literally, the second game between the 2 teams, the turnover difference, Calgary turned it over 3 times. Saskatchewan didn't turn it over at all, and Calgary still won the game somehow, despite being -3 in the turnover differential. So Saskatchewan was able to get to Bo, as I mentioned, 6 interceptions and 10 sacks, and still only won 1 of the 3 games. They're all these one-score tight affairs. The other thing that was super noticeable in that was it was kind of the first time where we went, oh, right, Saskatchewan does have problems on that offensive line because Calgary consistently rushing just 4 guys. I think between the 3 games, they may be blitzed 20 times in a 3-game span, which is an incredibly low number. And yet they're still generating pressure on Cody Fajardo and making him think and forcing him to go to his checkdowns earlier than he wanted to. And that was unexpected. So that was kind of our first, until then, 5-1. Hey, everything's great. Woohoo! The Riders are going great. We can forget about this. But Calgary really brought the offensive line and protection woes to the forefront in that 3-game series.
You mentioned Fajardo. How would you categorize his season?
Less lucky. And yeah, like his passing, you know, I've been charting these games for forever. His passing accuracy is actually still pretty good. It's down on the deep balls, right? He's leaving those deep balls inside and causing his receivers some problems. But passes that he got away with in 2019, like when he threw a ball that should have been intercepted by a defender in 2019, it was picked off roughly half the time. And that's a fair bit below the league average.
Sounds like you're
this
talking
season,
about Patrick
when Fajardo
Mahomes
throws an interceptable pass, it's being picked off 75% of the time. You go, oh, okay, well, that's where 11 interceptions go. Sometimes it just bounces back the other way. Plus, I mean, things are shorter to the line of scrimmage. There is the occasional deep shot, but those haven't come through. It's been, passing-wise, it's been inconsistent for Fajardo, but running-wise, still the number one scrambling quarterback in the league and number two as far as quarterbacks on designed runs. That part, I think, will always be with him. But, I mean, if you can't move the ball in 50-yard chunks sometimes, it's going to be a struggle.
Well, no doubt about it. I mean, it's the Canadian Football League. And that actually, it's funny you bring that up. I mean, I think back to those games between Calgary and Saskatchewan, and they were generally low scoring. I think the under hit in all three of them, if I recall correctly. And, you know, a big part of that was teams, you know, scrap. I mean, there wasn't a lot of those big explosive plays. You know, it was taking advantage of field position and kicking field goals and, you know, banging one in. I'd imagine, what's the weather going to be like on the weekend? And do you think that the Riders will be a run-first team trying to maybe open up a little more opportunity for Fajardo to get some of those big plays downfield?
As of right now, the weather's supposed to be just perfect. Like, we're late, you know, be late November at that point, looking at like 5 degrees at kickoff and sunny. So absolutely perfect for football. As to the running thing, they'll keep saying, you know, we want to get the run going, and people will say they want to get the run going. But through 14 games, they've never really been able to get the run going. They won a game in which they had 23 yards rushing from the running back. They're gosh, what is it, 8th or 9th in yards per carry from the running back this season. They just have to accept the fact that, honestly, they don't really have a running back run game that can affect the early portions. The late portions, if they were up 12, sure, William Powell can generate some stuff, but they kind of have to operate around the running back in the running game. That still leaves Fajardo in the running game, and it leaves some cool jet sweep stuff that you can do. But I just, as much as we talk about, hey, the running back becomes so important at this time of year, the Riders just have not had that this season. And it's not, to me, William Powell, but it's the whole thing. It's his blocking. It's Powell himself to some extent. It's the play calling. It just at no point really has it worked for the Riders this season.
On the defensive side of the football, DT, I mean, what are the biggest challenges and what are the keys to limiting Bo Levi Mitchell's success rate and keeping the ball in Cody Fajardo's hands?
Yeah, you want Woodard and you want AC Leonard, the two sack leaders in the league, to be getting to him, which they did in those first couple of games. And then, honestly, Kamar Jordan against that field side will be interesting because that has changed throughout the season and might have a change again this week. But the Riders will really need Nick Marshall to be at his best. Marshall has been maddeningly inconsistent this season. And now it's not, you know, Josh Huff, Markeith Ambles. It's Reggie Bagleton that will be the guy against Nick Marshall. Marshall, I was putting this out on Twitter. He got voted an all-star, but he allows 11 yards per target when he's targeted in coverage, which is almost double what Winnipeg's guys do, or even lesser teams like Edmonton and BC. Their boundary corners lock it down. Marshall gets beat for 75 and 52 and 36. So he is going to need to be at his very best. There can't be this, I'm going to try to undercut this and gamble for a pick. Oh, and by the way, and Jalen Tolliver gets in the end zone. Or I'm going to shade to the under and I let Danny Vandervoort catch his first ever touchdown in 5 CFL seasons. There can't be that. And that's honestly the matchup, that boundary wide receiver, boundary cornerback matchup for Calgary's O and Saskatchewan's defense is the one that honestly I'm going to focus on, because Marshall can make these incredible interceptions and play great, but he can try to gamble and get absolutely toasted. That to me is going to be critical. 175-yard toasting, and it's not going the Riders' way.
Derek Taylor, voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, joining us on Winnipeg Sports Talk, looking ahead to the West semifinal between the Riders and Stamps this weekend at Mosaic Field. Of course, the winner will come to Winnipeg. I hate talking about anything to do with COVID and vaccines. God knows we've done enough of that for a long time. But, Derek, it is a wild side story to this matchup. I mean, we heard from Dave Dickinson earlier this week, who, you know, was pretty straightforward, didn't name names, but said, you know, if they do win this game, there's some significant players on the team that will not be making the trip to Winnipeg because they haven't got their shots. You know, I have to admit, a team like the Bombers that had full buy-in, I think of the National Football League right off the bat, the Buccaneers, the Super Bowl champs, had full buy-in from their clubs. And these teams have been all business, thinking about winning football games, while the teams that didn't get that buy-in from players have been dealing with it all season long. And it's almost inconceivable that the Stamps might win this game and then, potentially have some pretty key players not in the lineup in a game to get to the Grey Cup.
It's baffling, right? Like key defensive players and potentially key players on the offensive line. Yikes. I mean, Saskatchewan had to deal with that this past week, and they revealed that, hey, Paxton Lynch isn't vaccinated, but Paxton Lynch was the number 3 quarterback and just misses out on an opportunity to get, 15 snaps in the game this past week against Hamilton. So Saskatchewan's been fortunate to, I don't know if they had the buy-in right away, but their coaches and management really worked at it and got the players to buy in to the point where they say no starter will be missing if they go on a deep playoff run and end up in Hamilton in a couple of weeks. It's puzzling, right? Like the one here, Paxton Lynch, right? How are you ever getting back to the NFL if you don't put anything on tape? And how are you going to put anything on tape if you don't get vaccinated? It just seems, I don't know, Huss, it just seems to me super easy to get to A, B, C. Get the shot, get to play. Your last chance to get to the NFL.
Well, and the other thing is, you're part of a team. This is not, again, I don't want to get down this road too much, but, at a certain point, what are you doing there if you know that, you're only going to be able to participate for a while and you work all season long to get to the Grey Cup, and to think that some players are just going to have to walk away in the middle of the playoffs is, it's astounding. That being said, I kind of wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what team poses a bigger threat to the Bombers in the West Final? But I guess it's a tough question to ask right now because, we don't really know what these teams are going to look like, especially Calgary, if they actually win the game and come to Winnipeg. Like, who's going to be there?
Yeah, since Saskatchewan last played Winnipeg, the Riders, just through injuries and nonstop unfortunate injuries, have honestly they've gotten weaker. Duke Williams, a fantastic addition. Honestly, he's been terrific since he came in. But you just keep losing guys to the 6-game injured list. They lost a starting receiver in week 16 to yet another Achilles injury. I think that's going to make it 18 guys on the 6-game injured list. They were 3-score games in the Labor Day and Banjo Bowl, and the Riders, from the roster perspective, have just unfortunately gotten weaker thanks to injury. So it'd be a little stiffer for them. Calgary has gotten better, right? Guys get healthy. They get their offensive line in one piece. They get Trey Roberson and Bagleton back. Calgary's gotten stronger since those. Is that enough to overturn? Like, honestly, between us girls, like, there needs to be some sort of natural disaster for Winnipeg to not advance out of the West Final, right? Just the way it looks and the success that they've had against both these teams this season.
Well, yes, but that scares the bejesus out of everyone here listening because there's been a lot of great teams in CFL history that have walked in as massive favorites after great regular seasons and haven't got it done. Hell, the Calgary Stampeders have been doing it for 10, 12 years. They always seem to be the clear favorite. And, often, they came up small when it counted, especially when it got really cold. And I bet if I'm Craig Dickinson, I would have loved it was like -10 or -15 for this game, because I think we have seen in playoff history, especially in the Bo Levi Mitchell era, some of those really cold games have been the ones where the Calgary offense, normally very high octane, has been pretty pedestrian.
Well, think about the Calgary ones. People bring up Calgary a bunch, and we were talking about it from the layoff perspective, right? As we talked about it on the Sports Cage. Well, Winnipeg has this layoff. Well, Calgary had a big layoff. What was it, 2016? And they got to the Grey Cup. They don't ultimately win the Grey Cup, but they get there. And to get there, they have to go through the West Final. So they get through that fine, and then they go to a Grey Cup, and they lose a Grey Cup in overtime. Like, that is just the coin flippiest of coin flip situations. 2017, they go to the Grey Cup. It looks like I wrote a piece for TSN. It was like 24 reasons the Stampeders will win the Grey Cup and 2 reasons why they won't. And then all of a sudden, here's 2 100-plus yard touchdowns by the Argos, and the Argos win the Grey Cup. Like, a lot of stuff had to go wrong. I think that shouldn't concern teams in the long term. Let's say it that way. You get to overtime against the Red Blacks, a team with 4 1,000-yard receivers. Okay, stuff might go wrong. They absolutely fluke 2 touchdowns on you because Tommy Campbell gambles and Kamar Jordan fumbles one unexpectedly. those are levels of, coincidence or disaster in that 2017 case. That's the kind of disaster I think needs to happen against the Bombers for somebody to beat them in advance. Well, in the West Final, let's just say that. Like if AC Leonard's going to pick Collaros off and run 100 yards for a score, all right, the Riders are in this one. Let's go. Luchez Purifoy takes one away and gets it down to the 10-yard line, and then the Riders stuff it in from there. All right, 14, let's go. But Winnipeg is just so strong in so many areas that it's going to take a real specific set of circumstances for either one of these teams, the Riders or the Stamps, to undo them.
Derek Taylor with us. DT, you got a lean on the East semi? Looks like Hamilton's about a 4.5-point favorite at home against the Montreal Alouettes, who have had a few players that have been doing quite a bit of talking this week. They seem like they're quite excited to get to the hammer for a chance to knock out the team that's hosting the Grey Cup.
Yeah, I think Hamilton's the best team in the East. They have a tough road, right? Because they'll have to go through Toronto, a team that's hit them pretty good the last couple of times they played. Honestly, I love Hamilton minus 4.5 in this one. Whether or not they get Braylon Addison back into this game, they've done really good things with Tim White and Pappy White in that Braylon Addison role. They both had some runs against the Riders last week as they put some stuff on film. That to me, Hamilton, that defensive front is fantastic. They can all cover those linebackers. Simone Lawrence, now the all-time franchise leader in tackles. Javon Santos Knox goes sideline to sideline. I thought Hamilton will be the most talented team in the East, and provided everybody gets back healthy, if they can get around their offensive line woes and whatever on earth they do with their running back running game, who really knows? But Masoli's been super impressive since he came back from injury. He went well over 100 throws without an interception and without even an interceptable pass. Like, he's been crushing it so far, and he adds a little bit of that run game. Honestly, I just think they take Montreal because Montreal's got some great stuff to them. 1, they can cover. 2, stand back's a monster. And 3, that receiving core is good. But 2021 is the year I've kind of come off the Trevor Harris love. I would have thought, third best quarterback in the league, 4th if Zach is healthy. I don't even know what I do with Trevor Harris now, throwing for 175 and 150 in these low totals.
Well, you know what? I mean, just you mentioned Hamilton, and I mean, I'm sort of with you, man. I certainly think, on paper, they have been the best team, but they've been very disappointing at times this season, and none more than that opportunity against the Argos a few weeks ago, where if they had won that game, I mean, they would have been in pole position to win another game and then be sitting back this weekend waiting to see who comes to Hamilton. Well, what do you make of some of the performance they've had with a lot on the line that when they have come up small?
Yeah, that one was the absolute puzzler. I honestly thought Hamilton would be able to take that game, and then they just got shelled. Their offense couldn't do a thing against the Argos, and all of a sudden here's MBT doing his work for the Argos. I honestly don't know. I kind of wonder. This is based on nothing, but is it a Chris Jones thing? Does Chris Jones know what to dial up as the defensive coordinator against the Ticats? Or what is it? Is it the fact that they are almost zero threat to run the football? Don Jackson's had some good games, but they can only get him in there sporadically, and then he did nothing this past week against the Riders. Is it Chris Jones? Because that defense has some real great pieces to it, speaking of the Argos. I honestly, that is maybe, apart from Edmonton being terrible, that Toronto-Hamilton result is the second most baffling thing to me this season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, of course, Ryan Dinwiddie up for Coach of the Year going up against Mike O'Shea. All those player awards were nominated today. Stanback and Collaros is the most outstanding player. And, of course, the defensive player, Simone Lawrence, and Big Hill, Stanley Bryant up for the top offensive lineman. Do you see the Bomber nominees running the table, much like the team did in the regular season?
Well, Collaros wins it. Stanley Bryant should win it. Tackle over guard. I like Revenberg fine, but tackle over guard. Adam Big Hill's the curious one for me. I don't know, Huss, if you voted, but if you had a vote, or would you have voted for Big Hill over Jeffcoat, over Jefferson, over Alexander, over Alford, over Nichols?
I think I would have, to be honest. But and man, we spent a lot of time talking about the program about exactly that. I mean, you've got this historically good defense with all-stars at just about every position. I mean, that was the most difficult choice without a doubt. I mean, there's a compelling argument for Willie Jefferson. There's a very compelling argument for Jackson Jeffcoat. And I think those guys, the fact that neither of them, they were both so good, they didn't stand out over the other. I think a lot of those votes then went to Big Hill, but Big Hill had a great season. I mean, he came out right from game number 1 against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I mean, played throughout the season, did a number of things. I mean, even moving back into the secondary at times when they had been protecting leads. Listen, there was no wrong answer for that question, but the bottom line is Adam Big Hill got that. And, listen, Lawrence is a heck of a football player. A lot of people don't like him for some of the things that he's said and some of the things that he's done on the football field. But, I mean, I almost think that, whoever the Bomber nominee was going to be would almost be representing that Bomber defense. And I just have a hard time thinking that people would vote for somebody over the leader of a Bomber defense that did such incredible things this year.
Yeah, I think Big Hill's the one where I'm concerned. I wouldn't have chosen Big Hill because his numbers were okay, right? Like he wasn't. Darnell Sankey in Calgary has 90 tackles, and those are usually the kind of numbers that get you the love. He had interceptions, he made plays, he did multiple things. Jackson Jeffcoat, to me, if it was Jeffcoat and Simone Lawrence, to me it should be a cakewalk in Jackson Jeffcoat's favor. But Simone has some of the narrative that we in the voting public like, right? Oh, he's now the Ticats all-time leading tackler. Oh, okay. Well, now maybe I go for something in that vein. I thought Big Hill was fine. I just thought there were better choices from the Bombers. And Jackson Jeffcoat was my number 1 defensive end.
I was about to say, give us the because one of the most difficult things, and I mean, I didn't know. I'm trying to think of. Willie's a much flashier player and has the great quotes, and you're always watching him. It's hard to take your eyes off of him, but when comparing the season that Jefferson and Jeffcoat had, and certainly they play off each other incredibly well. It's a big part of their success. Why did you tap Jeffcoat over Willie J?
So Jeffcoat's got more quarterback pressures by our count this season. He leads the league in quarterback pressures. He stops behind the line of scrimmage, sacks, things like that are fairly even. And the way they got their sacks is fairly even as well. There's sacks where you beat a guy. There's sacks where you clean up somebody else's work, stuff like that. Both of them were pretty even. Jefferson in 2019 might have been the greatest defensive season I've ever seen in my life, right? Like he's just swatting balls. He's taking them away. Everything is working in his favor. Jeffcoat's forcing fumbles. Jackson Jeffcoat, to me, however much you need to attribute to his running mate and Willie Jefferson, I don't know. That's a level for coaches to determine. But I just think Jeffcoat, start to finish, was an absolute force this season and the top defensive end in the Canadian Football League.
Hey, DT, just before we go, what sort of crowd are they expecting at Mosaic? I know it's been a crazy season for butts in seats, very unique challenges. Some people, that had seats, probably not getting vaccinated, not be there. I know there's the nervous people, but this is religion here. Do they expect a good crowd on the weekend?
Yeah, I'm expecting over 30,000 plus.
Nice.
I was on Ticketmaster yesterday just to see, and there's still some seats available. But as people get to know that, oh, hey, by the way, it's going to be 5 degrees at kickoff. And oh, by the way, it's your chance to boo Bo Levi Mitchell. Come on down.
Oh, man. Well, I tell you what, I've picked the Riders. I'm hoping we will be seeing you and the men in green in Winnipeg on the 5th, just because it's already going to be an incredibly special day. It's been an amazing season for the Bombers. Because of how dominant they've been, we've kind of had this date circled on the calendar for about 2 months right now. The only way I think it could get better would be to have a Bomber-Rider Western Final. And the Bombers haven't hosted the Western Final in literally forever. So what better way to do it than with their arch rivals with the trip to the Grey Cup on the line?
I can't wait. I'm going to be there either way because it's Bob Irving's last game, right? So even if the Riders aren't in it, we're driving into town because I just want to be there for such a huge day.
Well, hey, and by the way, just on that, I mentioned this earlier. I'm not sure whether you heard it. Bob's going to be celebrated before the game. And Bob is going into the Ring of Honor on the 5th of December. So great. Bombers just announced that in the last hour or so. And I was saying before, you think about all the great players that have worn the uniform of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But if you ask any fan that's probably, that's been around in the last 4 decades, Bob Irving and the voice of Bob Irving is as synonymous with Blue Bomber football as maybe anyone that's ever put on the jersey on.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. Yeah, I mean, listening to him when I lived in Winnipeg and just getting to know him along the way and, calling games opposite him. Yeah, it's absolutely a treasure. I'm so glad to hear that Ring of Honor will happen because absolutely deserved. Bob will be like, no, come on, that's for play. Bob, it's for you. The media booth, the Bob Irving Media Center, and the Ring of Honor. That's fantastic. I want to see that in person for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll hopefully we can get together next week and talk about it, whether the Riders are here or not. We'll look forward to seeing you back here in the Peg going forward, DT, and we'll actually wish the Riders luck on the weekend. You don't hear that very often from Winnipeg, but I certainly look forward to it. Hey, just before we go, you been paying attention to any of the curling up the highway here in Saskatoon?
Yeah, we were there up there on Tuesday we got to see a little bit of Matt Dunstone, and it hasn't gone real well for him today. That Gushu, hey, he just doesn't stop.
Yeah, well, he got his first L from the gunner, Jason Gunlickson, upsetting him last night. That was like a 5 or 6-1 money line underdog there, DT. If you like to put a little sprinkle on curling anytime, but I know we're going to be focusing on football. Of course, we've got some NFL action today, and then this weekend it's all about who will be traveling to Toronto and Winnipeg for a matchup, one game to decide who plays in the Grey Cup in Hamilton. Derek Taylor at DT on SC. Thanks for doing this, my man, and hopefully we'll see you in the Peg next week.
Sounds good, Hustler. Take care, brother.
Right on. There is Derek Taylor joining us on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We're going to get back to some more Jets talk with Wiebe himself. Can't wait to hear about the travel agenda of Ken. He's been all over the place. I think he's in Minneapolis now, was in Columbus, was in Grand Forks. We'll get to that in a second. If you're doing a road trip, need to have a great rip. And if you're thinking about a new car, you should, before you do anything, talk to the folks over at Knott Auto Corp. Why not get into the car of your dreams at an amazing price with the help of the Knott team? You can see them over at Waverly and McGillivray. You can check them out online at knott.ca. And of course, hit up social media at Winnipeg Car Lab. Get in the lab is on right now. You've got wraps, striping, tinting, rims. If you need to do something special to a vehicle, why not get in the lab as well? It's all there, Waverly and McGillivray at knott.ca. Of course, we were talking yesterday quite a bit about the new Olympic jerseys. Some people love them, some people don't, but the ones that do love them want to get their hands on them, and the stock is in at Royal Sports right now. You can get down the black, the red, the white jerseys are all available. Canada Olympic gear, not to mention Canada soccer gear, tons of Jets gear. For those of you that haven't burned your Jets fan card after 3 regulation losses in a row, and of course, everyone ready for December 5th, tons of Bomber gear there as well. Not to mention the hockey headquarters of Winnipeg, snowboards, so much stuff for winter. Get on over Royal Sports and follow them on Instagram for all the latest sales and deals at Royal Sports Pembina. They'll have some big deals tomorrow for Black Friday as well. And of course, our friends over at Little Brown Jug are celebrating 5 years. And to celebrate, there's a brand new beer, the Brute IPA, a celebratory beer brewed for Little Brown Jug's 5th anniversary, a champagne-like extra dry IPA with flavors of citrus and stone fruit. Those are available along with very special 5-year edition tulip glasses at Little Brown Jug on William Avenue, as well as on the website at littlebrownjug.ca. And with Christmas just around the corner, some great new Little Brown Jug toques are available. And for those of you that don't like shopping like me, check out the gift boxes. They've got ones created for you, or you can create your own, put it all together. They'll wrap it up nice and deliver it wherever you need. It's all there at littlebrownjug.ca. All right, let's get back to the Jets. We got to bring in Ken Wiebe, who's been... Well, first and foremost, let's get Ken in here. Ken, welcome to the program. Fill us in. How are the travels? I was listening to Kenny and Rennie after the Monday show. I was here in Saskatoon, and Sean had an early flight. And then I heard that you had to drive to Grand Forks. Give us the itinerary of the last 48 hours for Wiebe's World.
Sure, Huss. Great to be with you as always. So I added the trains portion of the deal today. I got the automobiles portion wrapped up after I spent about half an hour on the Kenny and Rennie postgame show after Monday's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I got in the car, pulled off the Superman change in the phone booth in the back seat in the parking lot. Got a little more comfortable, got in the car, got to the border, crossed with relative ease. Except at midnight when you're crossing the border, only the semi-truck lane is open, Huss. So the border agent is upon high. So you have to put your car in park and like hand up the passport. But it was a very uneventful drive. Great roads in North Dakota, as we know. Got on the plane at 5:15 a.m. to make it to Columbus. The original premise was to be up that early so that I could potentially make it to the Columbus Blue Jackets practice, Huss. But with them playing in Buffalo the night before, they decided to bang the practice. So that left me a little weary-eyed with no sleep, but great to be back on the road for the first time since the bubble in August of 2020. The travel today was a little bit less stressful and hectic, but that did mean that I missed today's skate. But our guy, Mike McIntyre, has kept us up to date with what was happening at practice today with the changes to the power play with Paul Stastny being back on the ice and with the open-ended possibility of Hellbuck potentially playing both games depending on the volume in tomorrow's game. But the travel, it's been interesting, Huss. I mean, airports are a little different the last time we came, and we've been on a lot of trips to Minneapolis for Vikings tilts, and to roll into the Marriott and have the front desk say that they've struggled to get to 40% occupancy, meaning lounges are closed and things like that. It's a tough time for many in North America, as we know. But I mean, great to have the privilege to be on the road covering the sport that we love. But we're still seeing the economic impact in both the cities that I have been in on this road trip so far.
No, there's no doubt about it, and very well said, Ken. So let's get to the game. I mean, more of the same. Lots of pucks on net, lots of things happening at a 5-on-5. The special teams stink, and the Jets are wasting brilliant performances by Connor Hellebuyck. Did I kind of sum it up pretty well?
I'd say you've touched on many of the points that have been written about in the last while, Huss, for sure. And first, before I dive in, I love the throne speech that you can deliver on that chair in the room right there. And I hope that the event is going well. It sounded like there was just an epic game the other night, the 10-9 special. That must have been pretty fun to dive into. I know you had the Coolbet Lines moving, and there was some interesting possibilities there.
Jen Jones was 80-1.
I know.
They do live betting on the feature game going in to the 8th, down 3 without hammer. Jen Jones was 80-1. Got the steal of 3, got a steal of 1 in the 9th, and then Carey came back with 2 in the bottom in the 10th to win it 10-9. It's funny you say that. We'll get to the Jets. I actually was just having a chat with Carey. She was off earlier today and bumped into her in the hospital. She said, "Oh, hey, how are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I mean, my heart's just, getting back to a normal rate from that game with you and Jen the other day." And she kind of laughed, and that was one for the ages. It might not have been the most well-played game, but one of the most memorable ones. And put it this way, I've had a lot more fun watching the curling this week than I had watching the Winnipeg Jets, Ken.
Sorry, and back to dive in about the game. It was super interesting, Huss, because there were moments where the Jets were dangerous in that game. And I believe that, Elvis Merzlikins, with what is the best, with all due respect to Marc-Andre Fleury, whose kit we enjoy, how about the powder blue, rocking the blocker, the glove, and the pads? That's the best look in the National Hockey League right now, for my money. Back to the original premise, though, the Jets had some areas of their game where they were dangerous, and maybe they either missed the net wide or put it in the pillows, or Merzlikins had to make a great save. But then the part that we've been wondering about happened, Huss. The creeping in of the cheating in the game and what it meant for the the soundness of the defensive structure that had been so good during this lengthy stretch of games. They kind of got off that a little bit in sort of cheating for some offense. And as a coach, you don't want to see your players cheating for offense at any time. But when you cheat and you still don't accomplish the goal of getting your offensive woes taken care of, but it hurts you defensively, now you're back to the chalkboard and thinking, man, you hope that that's just a one-off if you're Paul Maurice, because you can't let that frustration seep into the game. And we know the Jets have run into some solid goaltending, but you don't get goalied every single night. Like, it starts to impact, whether it's confidence or where you're shooting and things of that nature. The Jets need to, they got comfortable playing in those low scoring games, but you can't get off of that structure because you're frustrated. And that's going to be the key on Friday afternoon in the matinee against the Wild, because we know, based on the first meeting and many of them before that, it wouldn't take much to get to a 6-5 game against the Minnesota Wild. And I can assure you that neither Dean Evison or Paul Maurice wants that to happen. He'd love to see his team score 5 or 6. He doesn't want to get into a track meet with the Minnesota Wild. So, and you touched on Hellebuyck, Huss. This is crazy to me. 8 consecutive games with 2 or fewer. The Jets have won 3 of those games by my calculations, I believe. 3, 2, and 3 in that set. That's not enough wins when you're getting elite level goaltending, right? I mean, those are missed opportunity points to put in the piggy bank at a time where we knew the Jets were running into a bit of a challenging schedule. I mean, the folks on our postgame show are, going a little bit wild, as you know.
No, you don't say.
And beating Columbus. I mean, Columbus is a good hockey team. We know that they're not the most high-profile team, but they're playing good hockey. Having said that, we know the Jets are about to play the 2 division leaders, and maybe it'll go the other way, Huss. We saw the Jets elevate their play when Edmonton rolled into town as a leader in the West. Maybe they'll do the same this weekend, but they've got some areas that they need to shore up, and as you mentioned, providing run support for Hellebuyck and getting the special teams going. Now, those are 2 massive things for the Winnipeg Jets.
Absolutely. Ken Wiebe with us on the road in the Twin Cities before the Jets play a Friday afternoon game. Yes, folks, it's a matinee, Black Friday in the States, 2:30 p.m., which means we'd normally be doing the show then. We're going to do it earlier, 11 till 1. And we won't really focus as much on the Wild game, especially for the podcast. Many people will be listening to it afterwards. Pat Steinberg's going to join me, my pal from Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. We'll chop it up about the Flames season, look ahead to Saturday night's game, as well as a whole bunch of football content, getting ready for the CFL postseason and the weekend in the NFL. And Brian Munns will join us for a very positive local hockey story about a team that's just beating the hell out of everyone in their path right now, 20-1 on the season.
Not a bad record.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, we'll get to the lines in a minute.
Sure.
You're very well said about Hellebuyck, and you look back at these points that have been left on the table. Special teams has been such a huge part of it. And, the penalty kill has been an Achilles heel pretty much since day one of the regular season. But right now, Ken, with a team that's unable to score at 5-on-5, despite all the chances that they're generating, to have a complete power outage on the power play is just putting gasoline on the fire that's burning right now for the Winnipeg Jets. What is going on with the power play?
Yeah, it's been a bizarre turn of events, Huss, for sure. And I understand people are up in arms and saying, change this, change. The Jets did change their power play. They went back to their original look with Wheeler on the half wall, Connor down low, and actually they did what people have been asking for, putting Nikolai Ehlers on that top unit, sliding Mark Scheifele into the slot where he had all of that success when Patrick Laine was in the one-timer spot. It didn't result in any goals, but I like the idea of going to that setup because the Jets were getting to a situation, Huss, where Mark Scheifele was creeping in too far and Kyle Connor was creeping out too wide. So they kind of, the shift of where you're trying to create 2-on-1s and getting shot lanes, it was getting very congested and allowing the opposition to take away both the shooting lane and the passing lane. So for me, Scheifele can be so dangerous in the slot. Kyle Connor's got such great hands. He can make those small area plays. And then he can also have that kind of button hook down low where he can jam it for a wraparound or come out, take a step, and try to go bar down. But the Jets need, we'll get into this next, I assume, Huss, but the Jets need to get Blake Wheeler going. He has 1 assist on the power play this year. This is a guy who flourishes on the power play with his ability to distribute the puck. It hasn't been happening for him in that down low scenario. So I think that's a smart idea to try to get the power play going. I think the Jets have gotten a little bit to a situation where they've been overpassing, looking for a perfect, knowing the longer the drought goes on, the more reluctant you are unload and try to get one of those greasy ones, as Nikolai Ehlers pointed out after the last game. When they've been getting shots from the top, whether it's from Schmidt or Pionk or Morrissey in the one-timer spot, they've been able to generate things from there, but there haven't been enough second chances. That's at 5-on-5, but also on the power play. There haven't been enough of those situations where the one-timer is stopped, but there's somebody on the doorstep to bang it home or to create a backdoor play after the rebound has occurred. So to me, I'm very curious to see how this will go. I think that getting Paul Stastny back, if he's able to play, Paul Murray's saying he would play in at least one of the games on the weekend. He wasn't sure which one. And I don't think he's ruling out the second game either, even though it is a back-to-back scenario, because we know there's a little bit extra time than usual with the 2:30 afternoon game and then the 9 o'clock start or 8 o'clock local start in Calgary, which also applies to Hellebuck. But it's so interesting, Huss. I mean, the Jets have gone from a scenario where both units were pushing one another, and now neither one of them has sort of taken the bull by the horns and hasn't been able to provide a lift when the Jets have really needed one. And honestly, missing Paul Stastny has been a huge factor for them, whether it's 5-on-5 or on the power play. Before Stastny left the lineup, the Jets had the third best power play efficiency in the National Hockey League. Now they must have dipped. I mean, they're at least in the middle of the pack. They were 12th. They were 13th going into last night's game. They probably dropped another few percentage points. But beforehand, Huss, they could have a good power play and not score, and you could still get some momentum. Now it's sort of become a deflator for them at various points in times. And that's also what the penalty kill has become. It's become a massive deflator for them right now. They've had stretches where they've gone, 140, 150, looking great, and then they give up a late one. I'll tell you what, Huss, in the building yesterday, when that penalty call was made to Riley Nash, it was a scenario where, I mean, you never know what's going to happen on a power play, but you sort of saw a little bit of a dip, and you kind of got that feeling in the building that it was going to be a tough penalty to kill off. And let's not kid ourselves. It's a ticky-tack call. The cross-checking standard has been all over the map lately. This was not a blatant cross-check in a game that had all kinds of activity that led to fines for both Max Domi and Josh Morrissey. But once the penalty is called, the Jets have to pick their teammate up in that situation. They just haven't been able to do so enough times of late.
That was a big league shot from Werenski, though.
No doubt about that. And this is the thing, perfect. Huss. I mean, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, Hellebuck kind of went down early, or, he did cheat ever so slightly. But if you look back at the play, there's not a very wide window for Werenski to hit, and he hit it. So
perfect.
Yeah, sometimes you have to tip your cap. I mean, if you're Hellebuck, you're saying, could you have had it? Sure. But it's just one of those scenarios where you just that's the time where if the Jets get a kill, now they're feeling good about themselves and maybe they find a way to rally in a 1-0 game. When it got to 2-0, you kind of saw that sag in the building and the Jets never really got a pushback after that point.
Yes, you're looking angelic now with the sunshine coming in. Just the light of positivity of Ken Wiebe saving the Jets nation right now as everyone backs away from the ledge after last night's game going into tomorrow. Hey, we're going to talk about Lines and Wheeler in a second. You mentioned Josh Morrissey, and I got to tell you, Kenny, I had mentioned that, in the third period of the game on Monday, it seemed like the Jets were a frustrated hockey club. I mean, they'd been doing a lot of things that you'd like to see. They'd been generating these chances. Nothing was going in. It was the same old story for the last couple of games. And, that frustration led to maybe doing some of the things that let that period get away from them. But there was no better example of just how frustrated this hockey club was by a ridiculous two-hander by Josh Morrissey in frustration, and after the empty net goal went in that cost him, he's getting an invoice from player safety for $5,000. And to be honest with you, he's pretty lucky that he didn't get a game for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, especially too. I mean, we know that it was more accidental, but when he got that suspension for cross-checking Eric Stahl in that playoff, I mean, maybe it's far enough. Maybe he's far enough removed now that you're not considered a repeat offender. But it was dangerous. And Huss, you talked about the frustration. I had gone down to ice level because we taped our post-game digital hit with Sean Reynolds basically they did their booth hit and then they came straight to us. So I was down there for the empty netter, but also, too, just after that, Andrew Kopp came by and smashed his stick in frustration on the glass in that same corner. So You saw a little bit of that frustration creep in, and again, you're always going to be disappointed when you're not burying the type of chances that you're used to generating and scoring on. But we haven't seen that frustration. And you know what? There's a part of it that you like it. You like the fire that's being shown, but you got to be careful. Like you said, that situation for Morrissey, if Morrissey is suddenly suspended for a game and can't play against the Wild on Friday, now you're thinking, man, it's fine. It's one thing to show some fire, but you have to be disciplined in what you're doing with those sorts of things. So I expect that, the Minnesota Wild to be the perfect elixir. I'm not sure it will lead. This is not guaranteed win night by any stretch. The Wild are playing great hockey. They're leading the Central Division. But what we do know is that there will be no shortage of intensity in the game. And when a team is, struggling a little bit in terms of results, gearing up to play one of your biggest rivals is something that should help this situation. Having said that, this is the longest losing streak of the year, and they're playing two incredibly tough opponents. So as the losses mount, the kind of the balancing act between being ticked off about it, but not letting it fester and get to 6 games, that is a bit of a test to a team when, it's a test to if you want to be we talked about this after Edmonton, if you want to be an elite team, you get dissected like an elite team. Like, you go back to that loss to the Oilers where they didn't convert on the 4-minute power play. That's what happens when you're a great team, or you want to be a great team. You look at all the minutia underneath the microscope, and those things are, some people would call it nitpicking, but nitpicking is the difference between being a very good team and being an elite team. So the Jets are going through a bit of a rough patch. They've had a 3-game losing skid and now a 4-game losing skid in their first quarter, but they're still in a pretty good spot. But having said that, if they let this ride out a little bit longer, we've seen what's happened. Vegas has got up the line. Colorado playing great hockey. So the cushion that they built with their hot start has now been mostly erased. So they have to work at not letting that good work that they did early get sort of put into the back burner by what's been going on lately.
Yeah, you do make a good point. And as low as many people are feeling right now about the way this last week has gone, the Jets are still 3 points out of first place in the division. And if they can somehow get a win tomorrow night against the Minnesota Wild, they'll be 1 point back. Now, they are tied with St. Louis for second, and there is a bit of a caveat. The Avalanche are 1 point back with 3 games in hand and are 8-1-1 in their last 10 and have won 6 games in a row. So in reality, you're talking about being tied for third in that final playoff spot. And at the end of the day, we talk all about it. It's the regulation losses in the current format of the National Hockey League that kill you. You can get lucky, you can squeeze a point out here and there, or get to overtime. And a team that has this sort of skill, you would think, more often than not, in 3-on-3 with a goaltender like Connor Hellebuck, probably wins more than their share of 50% of them. Yeah. But it's the regulation losses that you can see teams catch up very quickly, and that is sort of where the Winnipeg Jets are right now. So going into tomorrow, Ken, and you asked Coach about this yesterday after the game. And we played. It was a pretty interesting answer. I mean, we're just, of course, talking about the Wheeler-Svechnikov swap. And, a lot of people are making it seem like it was just, Maurice did it on a whim, or this is all done to coddle the captain of the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, I reminded people yesterday, the game against the Los Angeles Kings a couple Saturdays ago, the lines changed in the first period, they changed in the second period again, and then in the third, and the team went through about 35 minutes in that hockey game where I think they had like 3 shots on net, and they never seemed to have the puck outside of 3 feet from the boards. That is the time when you do make those changes. I understood why they did. And to be honest, I thought especially in that first game against the Edmonton Oilers that, Wheeler was generating and a big part of some incredible scoring chances. And I think Paul Maurice quoted, 19 shots for Connor in those first 2 games against Edmonton. All that being said, I think we're seeing the law of diminishing returns, and the returns weren't there to begin with, where it really matters on the score sheet. How much of this do you think is on the captain? Where is his play right now? And how do you see this going forward? What's in the best interest of the hockey team to get back in the win column when it comes to that Dubois-Connor pairing? Who should be there? And from an individual performance, what do you expect and hope to see from Wheeler, and how might the coaching staff help get him in a better spot night in and night out?
Sure, Hassan. First of all, I'll go back to the answer to my question about Svechnikov. he started off by being open-ended, and then he went, by the end of it, he said, no, that's not what I'm looking at.
Exactly.
So
It was bizarre.
The dismissive nature kind of caught me off guard, to be perfectly honest, because he said at the time, this is not about how Svechnikov has been playing. So if you know that that's worked, this seems like a natural situation to go back to it, even if it's only temporary. And as I wrote in Sportsnet.ca today, for Blake Wheeler to give him a better chance to play his way out of this tough patch, I think putting him on a third line with Adam Lowry and Paul Stastny would be beneficial, not only to the Jets, but to Wheeler himself, to help him feel. We know this. Blake never lacks confidence, but we also know Blake holds himself to a high standard. So no matter what he's saying publicly, he can't be thrilled by how it's going. He knows what kind of player he is, what kind of player he can be, and he wants to get back to being that kind of a contributor. And we know it's not only about points, but the thing that is standing out, Huss, this looks a lot like last year when Blake was trying to play through the fractured ribs. His feet are moving, but he's not getting to the spots he used to. I thought the other night, on Monday actually, his first period, he was skating very well. But whether it's 15, 20 seconds into his shift, the reservoir appears to be low. Like, he gives her very hard in bursts, but he doesn't seem to have the reserve tank there to hit the turbo boost after that. And I think that is where you're seeing the impact with Dubois and Connor, because of the explosiveness they're playing with. If Wheeler is not able to sustain that kind of up-tempo game for an entire shift, even if it's only a 45-second shift, it's causing the line to be a little bit disjointed. Now, we know that Yevgeny Svechnikov is not a burner, but he was a nice complementary piece on that line. And this is what I'm saying, Huss. I think that Blake Wheeler, when he gets back to feeling 100% or close to it, I think he can be an effective complementary piece on a line with Dubois and Connor. But right now, he's not generating the type of looks that we're used to seeing. Yes, he had 4 shots on goal yesterday, and one of them was right from the slot, but we're not seeing the same type of burst from Wheeler. And when that goes, that's when the frustration kicks in. And then, as I mentioned, it's not a lack of confidence, but the passing has not been as precise. And this is a guy who has one of the most, best vision in the, among the best vision in the NHL, and he can find the seams at will. His passes have been a little bit off here and there. And honestly, Huss, we're learning on the fly about COVID, and it affects each individual differently. But I have to believe, based on the body of work, that Blake Wheeler is being impacted by COVID. I mean, I think that that's a natural reaction. We can't ignore the fact that he's 35 years old, but I don't think for one second Blake Wheeler is finished being a contributing player to the Jets. But right now, I think his best contribution could come in a third line capacity, where he is also, the centerpiece of the power play, where he's piled up a ton of points during his career. But whether Paul Maurice is willing to go that far, that remains to be seen. But what I will say is this, Huss, 2 things have happened that we probably were not expecting to see this year. This has now been a stretch where Blake Wheeler has been split up from Mark Scheifele for, I think, it was now a 5-game period until they were reunited. And it's now 3 consecutive times when the Jets were preparing for a 6-on-5 situation, Blake Wheeler was not one of the 5 forwards on the ice. So that only happens if Paul Maurice sees what you and I are seeing, Huss, right? He's not just doing that on a whim saying, you know what, I'm going to punish the captain by taking him off a 6-on-5. That'll get him going. That's not how Paul Maurice thinks at all. He's looking for spaces to help Blake Wheeler and help the Winnipeg Jets. And honestly, I think, as I wrote in my lead, I think this is a situation where less can be more for Blake Wheeler. Giving him less ice time and less responsibility would allow him to maximize his effort, which we know is high, in a period of time where you're not asking him to be more taxed and playing 19 or 20 minutes. And I think that if you did that for a period of time, even if it's a short period of time, then you get Blake Wheeler back feeling better about himself. It might allow some additional help in terms of recovery, if like what we're talking about being, having impact of COVID. If you're playing less, it's got to be easier to recover, right? I'm not a doctor, Huss, but I mean, it just stands to reason it's going to be tougher to get yourself back up to full speed if you're playing 20, 21 minutes than if you're playing 16. And you know what? Blake Wheeler can get it together. He can find his game and still be a contributing player. But it's a delicate situation. I mean, it's easy if you're not invested in it and if you're just a fan, you say, just sit him down or whatever. And I've seen people say, put him on the fourth line. No, Blake Wheeler can still contribute to the Jets in a top 9 role. There's very little doubt about that, even though he only has the 5 assists in 14 games. But I think if the Jets put him in a little bit of a better spot, they'd get more out of him, and then you'll get back to where you want to be. Because, Huss, we know the original premise of the move, contrary to what Paul Maurice said, was to try and help get Blake Wheeler going by putting him with the 2 forwards that were playing the best hockey. And the Jets need Blake Wheeler being a key part of it to be successful in the playoffs and down the stretch and all of those things. But again, back to what I was saying, my premise is that if you give him a little bit less responsibility, take a little bit of that pressure off, I think you'll see Blake Wheeler have more impact on the game.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think where we're at right now, I mean, I don't think that, I mean, you would probably know better than me or around the team more, but I'm not sure that there would be, I don't think Wheeler would be upset with that. I mean, you mentioned like his confidence is always high. I'm not there right now. I think his confidence is really shaken right now. With
public
what's
confidence,
happened so
I meant
far.
Huss, public confidence. Like when he speaks, he's always, everything's going to be fine. I've been doing this since I was 4 years old, and that's all true. But right now, it doesn't look like he's playing with the same level of confidence that we're used to seeing.
No, absolutely on that. And listen, I've often joked over the last few years that, the Jets have been a union shop and we know who runs it. It's Maurice and it's Wheeler and it's Scheifele and then it's everyone else. But I think we've seen a changing of the guard in that, the most impactful players this year, especially when we're talking about the forwards, have been Pierre-Luc Dubois, have been Kyle Connor. And right now, you're expecting more from Nikolai Ehlers and Mark Scheifele as well. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and again, I didn't have an issue with the change at the start, and I thought that the early results of what we saw, especially in that Edmonton series, were really good, but it's trending in a bad way right now. We're seeing what's happened in the loss column the last little while, and if I'm Paul Maurice, everything is on the table when it comes to who's playing with who. It doesn't matter whose feelings are hurt. They got to go and get a win. And hopefully tomorrow afternoon against the Minnesota Wild. And the only thing, in my opinion, that would be off the table is splitting up 80 and 81. Everything else, I think, is in flux right now. And, much like we saw in that LA game a couple weeks ago that led to that change, I think it's blender time, and maybe we'll see some new combinations, some things that we haven't seen before, because right now it seems like this team is doing a lot of things right, but they're banging their heads against the wall. They're not getting any puck luck, and maybe it's one goal that will sort of open up the floodgates. You certainly hope that from the Jets' perspective, but the bottom line is they're banging their heads against the wall, doing the same thing over and over, and the results aren't changing.
Sure. And that's the other part too, why I think the return of Stastny is so important. Like, it's not a demotion for Paul Maurice to go out and say, hey, Blake, I need you to play with Paul Stastny. He's coming back off an injury. You guys have had success before. You've been line mates at various levels and you like playing with one another. You're great friends. So to me, that's not a demotion. And I mean, we always get stuck in the numbering of lines and who's getting what. And we know Nikolai Ehlers' ice time is up. We know Andrew Kopp's ice time is up. So, I mean, the numbering part doesn't really matter. If Blake Wheeler is on a third line with Paul Stastny and let's say Adam Lowry, or even if it's Jansen Harkins or whatever way they decide to shake things down, I mean, that can still be a very effective line. I mean, and that's the part that we're talking about here. You're looking for solutions as a head coach, and of course, you would want to ride the guys that have got you to the dance and shown you. I mean, Blake Wheeler had consecutive 9-1 point seasons. Right now, he's not playing at that level. And he may not get back to playing that level. But even last year, after the fractured ribs, he got himself back to being nearly a point-a-game player. So the tools are still in the toolbox. It's just a matter of maximizing the skill set. And right now, putting him with Lowry and Stastny, I think would make a lot of sense. Because much like we saw when it was Scheifele, Wheeler, and Lowry, that line had some effective stretches of time. So
let me ask you this, because you did say it's somewhat delicate, and I thought you did a good job of kind of describing these challenges from a coaching staff to what's going on with the captain. But it was quite easy for them to, Svechnikov, who had some relatively good results, riding shotgun with those guys, moving him to the third line. He's a new player. He came on a PTO. He sort of found money. from a coaching standpoint, how much harder is it for Paul Maurice to make some of those tough decisions and have a guy that has been his horse, is the franchise leader in everything, and saying, you know what, we need you to take a more secondary role right now because there's some other guys that, frankly, are producing more, and I think they give us a better chance to win.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those two guys have a great relationship. So I'm quite confident in thinking some of these candid conversations are taking place. Maybe they're not using the same type of wording that we're using here, but I think that, Paul Maurice sort of, to me, Sean didn't agree with me, but to me kind of laid the groundwork for this possibility in training camp when he was asked about the emergence of guys like Ehlers. Paul Maurice referencing Steven Stamkos playing essentially third line minutes with the Tampa Bay Lightning at various times because of the emergence of Point and because of the emergence of, obviously Kucherov's been one of the best players in the league, but to me, and look at the year that Stamkos is having. Now Point goes out and you have no problem bumping him back into the top 6 where he's used to being an absolute force. And I think it's a similar situation, but of course there's always a delicate nature. Players have a lot of pride. They don't want to be told that, Blake Wheeler doesn't want to have his minutes reduced. I'm an 18 to 20 minute player. That's natural. But the other thing that we've always heard from Blake Wheeler, he wants to win. He's at the stage of his career. It doesn't matter if you're piling up points, not winning. This guy wants to win a Stanley Cup. He was, even though he went to a better situation, he was robbed of the opportunity to lift the cup in 2011 when Boston traded him to the Atlanta Thrashers. That has been a driving force throughout the course of his career and remains a driving force for him. But at the same time, when you're not playing at that high, that elite level that you're used to playing, I think taking a slight step back, but also putting yourself in a spot against different levels of competition can help him get the motor back revving, back at peak efficiency. So, how coaches handle that is difficult. Paul Maurice has been around Blake Wheeler a long time. Blake Wheeler sets the standard for the Winnipeg Jets. There are a lot of good complementary pieces around him, and some guys are taking on bigger roles, and that's the natural progression. But Blake Wheeler is still going to be, and I think he will be, an impact player for the Winnipeg Jets. But right now, I think, again, this is a move that could help both the individual and the team, both in the short term and over the long term.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I'll look forward to you and Sean doing a little post-game action from the Twin Cities tomorrow. And then, of course, Saturday night in Calgary. But I know you're going to a hockey game in the Twin Cities as well. So, but anyways, Ken, listen, thanks so much for doing this.
At UND. My first trip back to UND since the 2005 World Junior Huss. So for me, I can't wait to get back to Ralph Engelstad Arena, and looking forward to this update from Daniel Fink to provide how many passengers are currently on the Gus bus. We'll get to the bottom of it with Daniel right away here.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that bus could show up in the Twin Cities tomorrow, and we would be taking him from the front seat of said bus into the starting lineup and seeing if he can help the penalty kill in the bottom 6 right now for the Winnipeg Jets. Wiebe, travel safely. Thanks for doing this, dude.
My pleasure, my man. Have a great rest of the show and a great rest of the week.
Great stuff. As Ken said, we're going to catch up with the Fink in a second, talk a little bit about the Manitoba Moose, try and focus on some more positive hockey stories. We'll have Munzie on the 20-1 ice. And a great weekend for the Moose last week. They're getting ready for a couple matinees this weekend. While we do that, do want to give a big shout out to our friends at Boston Pizza. Great day to be at BP. NFL Thursday all day. We got some hockey tonight. Of course, the curling on the air as well. No better place to gather with friends for some ice cold schooners, great pizzas, Boston wings, and more than your local Boston Pizza. And if you're staying in today enjoying the football, just pick up the phone, call your local location, or hit them up online at bostonpizza.com for free delivery. Of course, our friends at Nick and Nicky DQ, great supporters of the program. 4 locations, the DQ in Niverville, DQ Northgate, both with drive-thrus, DQ at Polo Park, and the DQ St. Anne's, which is now open year-round under the management of Nick and Nicky, and they're also available on Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats for you folks out in the St. Vital area. If you're needing a cake for an event coming up, maybe a little gathering or a party at your spot, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba, and they'll get it ordered for you, ready to pick up fast and easy. And when you are stopping by, check out that new Steakhouse burger. It looks absolutely amazing. And don't forget tomorrow, folks, early show because of the afternoon Jet game, 11 a.m., And we'll, of course, be doing our Canadian Club Marble Race. We've got another hoodie to give away. We've got another I Love Rye package to give away. So if you are a regular on YouTube, or maybe you're listening on the podcast and usually 1 to 3 doesn't work, join us on the lunch hour. We'll get it going sometime between 12:30 and 1 before the end of the program with our great friends at Canadian Club. Of course, Canadian Club available at IG Field for all events, is the official sponsor of the Bombers, and at your local Manitoba liquor marts. We will do a Princess Auto curling report from here in Saskatoon in a minute, but right now, let's welcome in the voice of the Manitoba Moose. It's the Fink. Daniel Fink joining us. Great. This is one of the great backdrops we've ever had. You've had a few lately, my friend, but in the dressing room, getting ready to get back on the ice, kind of that early season AHL college schedule, a week of practice, and now back-to-back games. But the guys were out in the community yesterday.
Yeah, so I guess today I'm the only one in the building, or at least at this point of the day, the only one in the building. Day off for the guys, well deserved after a very busy start to the season. But yeah, you were mentioning yesterday, able to get outside for a little bit of a skate, hit up Camp Manitou, the outdoor rink there. An incredible outdoor rink.
Is that new?
Guys,
like with the
been there
roof
a
on
couple years now. Yeah, a couple years now that they've got the roof in there. There's some like pretty much NHL quality glass on that rink. The ice is phenomenal. It's pretty impressive facility that they have out there at Camp Manitou. Just it's amazing how much that camp has changed over the last few years with all the work that the True North Youth Foundation has put into it, and it's a pretty cool place to check out. And yeah, if you ever have the chance to be out at that rink, I highly recommend it.
Oh man, I mean the pictures you sent over were awesome. And I mean, I remember Gary and I doing a couple shows there with some fundraising events that we were working on with Camp Manitou and True North, but I didn't see that. So, I mean, this is a development, as you mentioned. There's a lot of cool things happening out there. And certainly it seemed like the guys were having a good time. And I mean, a lot of people with the Moose are having a good time right now. This team's playing some good hockey. And, you know, if anything, coming out of the weekend they had last week, they're probably chomping at the bit to get back on the ice in actual game situations and want to keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned, they're one of the busiest teams in the league at this point. Have played 16 games. I believe that's tied for the most, maybe second most in the entire league right now. So they got off to a busy start, and so now they're kind of reaping the benefits of that, in that they'll only play 2 games over pretty much a 2-week span. So as you mentioned, kind of that college schedule that they're in right now. But yeah, looking back at the last few games, played the Milwaukee Admirals 3 straight, which was definitely fun, kind of like a mini mid-season playoff series. And the Moose came out with a couple of big wins to start that out, cruised to their first win 6-2. Second one required a little bit more work when the Admirals had other ideas coming back from a 3-0 deficit, but Christian Reichel comes through with a big goal at the end of the game with just a minute left to give the Moose the win. And then just not really Manitoba's night in the finale. They lose 5-2, and you know what? They haven't had many tough games like that throughout the season. So I guess we'll spot them 1 through 16 games. So if anything, they've been a consistent team. So you just throw that one out and get right back to it against the Texas Stars. So I think if you were to ask the Moose through 16 games if they're happy with a 9-6-1 record, I think people will be content. They'll probably wince a little bit and look back and say, we'd love to have a couple more wins along the way in some games that we felt we outplayed our opposition but weren't able to pick up points. But a really solid start to the season that has them 3rd in the division.
You know, there was some great highlights. I mean, I was traveling on Saturday and I went back and kind of checked out the game. And, you know, whether it was Ville Heinola, David Gustafsson, Cole Perfetti, I mean, many of the top Jet prospects, it seems like right now, are having just phenomenal seasons in the American Hockey League, and certainly making a case to Jet management that if need be, they're ready to walk down the hall.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. There was some incredible highlights that didn't even quite come together. We saw Ville Heinola walk through 3 guys on his way to the net, just wasn't quite able to tuck away a probably goal of the year candidate. We saw Cole Perfetti do the same with a couple of just dazzling moves that just he wasn't quite able to finish off. And David Gustafsson walked through a few guys as well. So the talent was on the ice for sure, and it's a lot of fun to watch these guys. I mean, the Moose have 5 players now up into double digits in points in the early season, and that's kind of in a group of teams. I think there's 1 or 2 teams that might have 1 or 2 players more around the league with that balanced scoring. But I mean, you start to look down the list. David Gustafsson leading the way, 13 points in 16 games, puts him on a pretty similar pace to last season. Ville Heinola, 12 points in 14 games. Obviously, for a defenseman, that's excellent, and he's just such an offensive driver for the Moose. Cole Perfetti finally broke out. Last time we talked, actually, he'd been in kind of a tough stretch, just couldn't get anything to go. It hit post after post. Well, he gets a 3-point game back on Thursday and has 4 points in the set. And then Leon Gavanka and Declan Chisholm, some of these guys that have just really been picking up points. Declan Chisholm at a 5.2 games against the Admirals. So the depth is there for this team, and you never know where it's going to come from. It might be someone like Cole Meyer picking up that key goal. It might be Christian Reichel as he did the other night, or it's going to be the Gus Bus rolling in and picking up those key points as well. So lots of options for Mark Morrison and his staff, and a lot of positives to talk about through the first quarter of the season.
Voice of the Moose, Daniel Fink, with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. How's Dylan Sandberg looked, and how's he fitting into the lineup after that training camp injury that kept him off the ice?
You know, for a guy that just dropped into the lineup for the last few games, doesn't look like he's missed a beat. It's pretty impressive to see a guy that's missed so much time, obviously missed that key time during training camp. Sometimes there can really be a ramp up for someone who's missed that early season to kind of catch up to everybody else. But you know what? Dropped right in, was a key contributor, slotted right back in with Jonathan Kovacevic on that pairing that was so strong for the Moose last season, and they just got back to doing what they do, and that's shut down the opposition, and for the most part that was cruising right along.
You know, Dan, the one thing that hasn't maybe stood out when you look at certainly the numbers and the stats of the season so far has been the goaltending numbers. I mean, what do you make of Mikhail Burden's season so far, as well as Arvid, the newcomer in the goalie tandem?
Mikhail was talking to the media just the other day, and he was asked to kind of describe his season so far. And he said, well, I can't say it's been great, but I wouldn't say it's been bad either. So I think he's looking for a little more from himself. But you know what? He has this ability to come up with key saves at key moments, even if he hasn't had kind of the game that he wants to have. I mean, we saw it back in Milwaukee, the last road trip, where the Moose end up in overtime, and he comes in and makes a big time save at a key moment to help the Moose along to a win. And some of those saves, that's what you're looking for your goaltender. You want him to make sometimes that save that he shouldn't at the right moment. And for Mikhail Burden, he's still doing that. Sometimes the numbers aren't going to go his way, especially with the rate that the Moose are keeping shots down. So if you only face 13 shots, but 4 of those are grade A chances or good chances the teams are going to get, and a couple of them go in, well, it doesn't look too great on the save percentage, but you're still getting the job done. So for Mikhail Burden, I think he's still trying to push himself, as of course he should be, and he'd like to see a little more from himself. He's a perfectionist, as all goaltenders are, but I think the Moose are pretty confident in the guys behind them.
Dan, set up this weekend series with the Texas Stars. Moose a little ahead of Texas in the standings. Moose 9-6-1, Texas 6-6-2 on the season so far, and back-to-back 2 p.m. games on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, some great matinee games for this weekend against the Texas Stars. First time these two teams have seen each other in almost 2 years. Last time was, I believe, December 13th, 2019, if memory serves correctly. So it has been a long time coming for these two teams to match up. So excited to see them in Stars. Some pretty good players on their roster. They had a really exciting rookie last year in Riley Damiani. He'll be up there with them. Curtis McKenzie has been a thorn in the side of the Manitoba Moose for a long time now, so it's a pretty good team coming in, and they've kind of found their way after a slow start. They have points in 4 straight games, so some good opposition. The Moose, of course, have been pretty much rolling of late, looking to have a really fun series between these two teams, and off the ice as well, looking to have a ton of fun tomorrow. We know it's going to be a good crowd already. We'd love to see even more people there for Manitoba Made Day. We're giving away sticker packs on the way in, and we're giving away pierogies, Huss, on the way out. I don't know how you can say no to that. Yeah, we are handing out bags of pierogies on the way out for fans. So I don't know how you can go wrong with that, or how you can turn that down. So I'm excited about it. I hope we have enough folks there to give away all of them. But at the same time, if we need to keep these frozen pierogies in my sunroom at home, which doesn't get any heat, and I just eat pierogies for every meal for the rest of the winter, I'm okay with that. So we'll see if there's a couple left over for me. But yeah, it's going to be a fun day. We've got some local musicians on the concourse as well. Curl Manitoba is bringing out their synthetic curling rink to celebrate one of our other winter pastimes here in the province. So it's going to be a really fun day, and we're looking forward to having everybody out for it. Well,
that's great. So that's the Saturday game?
That's the Saturday game. And then Sunday, we're giving away a pretty slick team poster as well. So there's all sorts of options for folks to enjoy here. So moosehockey.com/tickets to get yours. And again, that's a 2 p.m. puck drop. And to pump the folks in the concession department as well, they've introduced a couple new kind of kids packs that are some really great combos for the kids. Because I know sometimes you don't want to get the whole big chicken finger meal or the giant popcorn for the kids. Well, now they've got more of a kid-sized combo as well that are pretty reasonably priced. So we're really excited about some of those deals that we've been able to work in for folks to make it a little bit easier to take the whole family out to games. So be sure to look out for those if you've already got your tickets. Check out those on the concourse. And, of course, once more, moosehockey.com/tickets to get yours.
Hey, speaking of concessions, have you tried the Tot Dog yet?
No, I have not. I was actually just talking to Austin Siragusa today about the various options on the concourse and how that Jet Dog Burger is going down at some point this year. Going to have to try that out. But when I get that opportunity, I'm going to be ripping through the concessions when I finally get a little time to go to a Jets game in the stands rather than the press box.
Rave review. I mean, I'm normally a Jet Dog guy, but the rave reviews for the Tot Dog, and I've made a commitment. I will be getting one potentially at the next game I attend, and we'll do maybe a review here for Winnipeg Sports Talk. If there's one thing I know, it's about eating and drinking, not necessarily what's happening on the ice, of course. But exciting things happening with the Manitoba Moose. Dan, keep up all the great work. Both games on the weekend on cgob.com.
Yep, that's correct. And AHL TV as well. So excited to bring the folks that with Derek Meach. And yeah, going to have a great show for everybody. These two teams, I think, are going to be putting it all out there on the ice. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. There's going to be a lot of skill out there. And we'll see if the Moose can kind of keep their good home record going, 5-2-0 coming into this weekend.
Sounds great. Moosehockey.com for all the information. Tickets available. Manitoba May Day with that pierogi giveaway on Saturday, and then the team poster giveaway on Sunday. And I have a feeling this year's team poster will have a number of young men that will end up being big parts of the Winnipeg Jets in years to come. Fink, thanks for doing this, pal. Keep up the great work.
Thanks for having me on, Huss.
Great stuff. There is Daniel Fink of the Manitoba Moose. Can tell you, for those watching live right now, we have a final in the first NFL Turkey Day game south of the border. And what a game it was. The Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, two of the worst teams in the NFL, coming right down to the wire. And Matt Nagy, in what is expected to be his final game as Bears head coach, gets a win. Last-second field goal to put the Bears on top of the Lions, 16-14. And now the Lions sit at 0-9-1. The winless season still possible, but again, that tie a couple weeks ago against the Steelers means that they will not go 0-17. Let's get Remis back in here. Reem, I have to admit, I mean, the games can only get better after you start off with Chicago and Detroit, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of calls on social media. Can we ban like Detroit? Like, at what point are we like, okay, Lions, like your Thanksgiving privileges are getting revoked? Like, why do we have to open the day with this garbage game? Why is that the NFL Thanksgiving tradition? Like, at a certain point, you just got to move on, I think, from the Lions on Thanksgiving. Enough. Let's get some good teams on there.
Good teams win, great teams cover, and they did cover the number. Great start to the week for the Lock Shop. So thank you, Dan Campbell and the Lions, if for nothing else, then at least keeping it close and not losing by more than 3.5 points. A bunch of things I want to get to, but of course I'm here in Saskatoon right now. We've been really focusing on the Winnipeg Jets and obviously just had our Moose hit and talked some football earlier. But we should do a quick Princess Auto curling report. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsors of Jennifer Jones' team and Mike McEwen's team. Jen is off tonight. She's at 5-2, plays Tracy Fleury tomorrow, but she's already guaranteed herself a spot in the playoffs or at minimum a tiebreaker, depending on what else happens. Of course, Mike McEwen this afternoon, as we do this live on the ice against John Epping, and this is a huge game. Going into today, you had Cooey, Jacobs, and Gushu all with one loss, and then Epping and Mike McEwen with 2 losses. I mean, a third loss would really make it tough to leapfrog 2 teams into that playoff, but a win would really put the winner, whether it's Epping or Mike McEwen's team, in the driver's seat when it comes to, at least being in a tiebreaker to get into the playoff and potentially be playing in that final game to represent Canada for the Olympics. Now, tonight, the women's scenario was wild. You've got Tracy Fleury from East St. Paul, who has been the class of the event so far, 6-0 right now. Jen Jones, with their loss to Rachel Holman this morning, is sitting at 5-2. They're chilling tonight. They will not be playing in the final draw. So this is the way it looks. Rock versus Harrison, 1-5. They're done. Harrison at 2-4. Even the 4 lost teams are technically still in this right now because Krista McCarville's at 4-3, is playing Laura Walker today, who is at 2-4. If Walker is able to win that game to get to 3-4, McCarville finishes at 4-4, and then Manitoba's Carrie Anderson, who's 3-3 tonight, going into her game against Rachel Holman, could potentially win one and lose one, and we could have an absolute cluster of teams with 4-4 records. And I'm not even sure how many games or how that would work with the tiebreakers, but it probably would, need some high-level mathematicians to figure out. Bottom line is almost nobody is actually fully out of it yet, including Holman, including Harrison, who potentially could get into a tiebreaker at 4-4. But I know Manitobans hoping the Carrie Anderson's group can go get the win tonight against Rachel Holman, win tomorrow, get to 5-3, and maybe avoid a big cluster of teams. And there still is very much the possibility that the 3 teams that make it out of the women's draw will all be Manitoba teams. Tracy Fleury's going to be there. Jennifer Jones is going to be there. And if Carrie Anderson wins her next 2 games, she'll at worst be in a tiebreaker to get into the 2-3 game with the winner playing number 1. And it certainly looks right now like that number 1 is going to be Tracy Fleury. In fact, I think she's clinched it right now with the second loss for Jones. The worst record that she could have would be 7-1. Or 6-1, I guess, going forward. Okay, 2 goal games. So I guess technically just does need a win or another loss by Jones, but the worst that she could do is finish with 2 losses, which is at worst would put her in a tie for first place. And then it would come down to the head-to-head matchup, which of course would depend on who would be first place. But none of that matters if Fleury gets the win tonight against Scheidegger and clinches her spot in first place. Of course, games tonight on TSN. Right now, McEwen and Epping going at it. And all of our curling reports are brought to you by Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Jones and McEwen rinks, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Of course, family owned in Winnipeg. Canada National Headquarters in Winnipeg, 2 locations in Winnipeg that you can walk in, or you can start, letting the wheels turn up in the head and search for to make those projects come true at Princess Auto 24/7, 365. All right, let's get Remis back in here. Lots to get to. We've of course got these Thanksgiving Day games today. We've got the curling tonight. But I think still, Remo, I'm interested in your thoughts on our conversation with Ken. We hit a number of the topics of the Winnipeg Jets right now, and a lot of angst around the fan base after what's been a bit of a miserable week with some things that actually have been quite good, including Connor Hellebuck's brilliant play, but really struggling special teams and absolutely no finish right now for the hockey club has a lot of people wondering what exactly we're going to see tomorrow afternoon in the Twin Cities and then Saturday night against the Flames.
Yeah, these are 2 pretty big games. I mean, if I had to bet, I would bet that the Jets will not be winning 2 of 2 games. I would be very surprised. They definitely need to you'd like them to get 1 of the 2. I was just texting with some friends. They're like, one guy's like, are people like really mad? Like, I'm not super, I'm not hitting the panic button here. And I agree. I'm not hitting the panic button. I think your ears are perked up at the power play, lack of success. I think the penalty kill has been a long-term concern, going back years. It's consistently been, except for 2 years, it's been in the bottom third of the league, or bottom half, bottom third. But I think a lot of, I don't know, we know social media is not indicative of everyone, but you've seen a lot of people saying, okay, especially in our chat, that, the lines were going, you have a brief lull there in LA, but then you go away from that, and all of a sudden, since that first Oilers game, the team hasn't been able to score goals. Now they've generated a lot of chances, and some of them, maybe from the outside, not from within the net, within the, between the dots, but, I don't know. I think they can turn it around, but we'll have to wait and see. I think a couple of experiments you'd like to see them go away from. Riley Nash on the power play, which he did rotate in, but we'll see. I think if Paul Stastny's back, you do have to go back Wheeler, Lowry, Stastny. It gives you more balanced three lines. You can go back to Dubois, Svechnikov, Connor, but I think it's pretty clear. Paul Maurice still sees Blake Wheeler as a top 6 player, and it's kind of been like, okay, if you're a top 6. You can only play with top 6 players. If you're deemed a bottom 6 player, unless for Svechnikov in the early
the glass
early days,
ceiling between the top 6 and the bottom 6.
Yeah, like you're not moving up. Would you agree? Because Ken's saying put Wheeler on the third line. I don't know if they're going to do that, even though it seems like that would probably be best for the team right now.
It would make sense. I mean, and I think it would be great. I do want to say this. Like, I don't think just swapping Wheeler and Svechnikov is going to really, all of a sudden be the magic elixir.
What do you mean? That's exactly what it is. Magic elixir. Well, you just said it. Yes. No, what do you mean?
I would. Again, to me, it's all about Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, those are the guys. I mean, and they still are getting chances. I mean, if a couple of these chances that they've had over the past week goes in, how different are the conversations we're having right now? Probably quite a bit different. Now, I mean, if the penalty kill was a little bit better, if they had some success on the power play, how much different? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that are, not working right now for the Winnipeg Jets in the results table that at times in the game actually look fine. They're just not producing what they've been. And, Coach said, listen, it's great to be saying you're getting all these chances, but you actually certainly have to bury them. And if you don't, then, you got to look at doing some different things. But again, I find this week a very different, well, at least up until the third period of the Pittsburgh game into last night, as opposed to, playing horribly for 60 minutes and getting completely outclassed by their opponents. I mean, that hasn't been the case. But I do go back to, what we were talking about with Ken. I mean, they are wasting some incredible goaltending by Connor Hellebuck right now. And this is not a team. I mean, there's a lot of questions about what they could do defensively. The one thing that we haven't been expecting that we'd be having a conversation about is a complete power outage of the Winnipeg Jets. And I mean, that's basically what's been happening. And it was on full display last night. They put 36 shots on Elvis Merzlikins without anything to show for it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's why, at 5-on-5, maybe your concern level is not, we're at a 4-game losing streak. You're still in a good spot. I mean, hey, Huss, we're at American Thanksgiving. I don't know if you know that, but if you're in the playoffs at American Thanksgiving, you're basically going to be in the playoffs come, I guess they start this year in April or May, whatever it is because of the season and the Olympic break. But I think they're in a good spot. You're on a 3-game regulation losing streak. You lost the one in overtime to Edmonton. I'm not super concerned, but you'd like to see these guys start scoring, and I agree, Connor and Dubois. Connor's got 1 goal, in the last 4. Dubois has 0. Is it because that they switched up the lines? I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I don't think so, but, something has changed here in 4 games where they seem to be rolling. We were all like, this is the best team in the league. They beat Edmonton, and now we're not. I don't think we're hitting the panic button. I think you are concerned, though, that the power play isn't going, and the penalty kill continues to be in the bottom of the league.
Yeah, I mean, I'm far more concerned and rattled about the playoffs. The power play, as well as what's happening with the penalty kill. I mean, honestly, if you played these games out over and over again, I mean, think about how many chances they had against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, the Vancouver game, I thought they were the better team at 5-on-5 in all 3 periods by a pretty considerable margin. But, you take a few bad penalties, especially the one that Blake Wheeler took, which was, almost indefensible with it being so far away from your own net. I mean, that's somewhat careless. And then it's in your own net and you lose the game in regulation. It just seems like things are snowballing a little bit. So I'm certainly here for mixing things around, trying something new, seeing if they can get a little bit more success But you would hope that it's one of those things that, when they do kind of break the dam and pop one, maybe a bunch will be coming. Because we've been saying, I don't know what the team's shooting percentage is over the course of the last 4 or 5 games, but it's ridiculously low for what they're generating. And I would be way more concerned if the chances just weren't there, but they have been there at 5-on-5. But then if that's not happening and your power play stinks and you're not able to kill penalties, man, that is a lot you're putting on the shoulders of your all-star goaltender. And, for a guy that's given up, as Ken mentioned, 2 goals in 8 straight games, to only have 3 wins out of those, it's hard to wrap your head around right now. But the bottom line is some of the guys up front are going to need to start bulging that twine because nothing's happening if the team doesn't score any goals. It's a pretty simple equation.
Yeah, and you talk to, I just don't see why you wouldn't just immediately go back to what was working when you were scoring goals. Just go back. The 3 balanced line approach, like, are we going back to 11-7, Huss? Are we going to bring that back again? That team seems to be rolling.
I'll be honest. I would be fine with that. And if that means, and here's the thing about the 11-7 that I liked. There's nothing to do with the 7 on the blue line.
No, it
has to do with, a bit player, and a guy like Riley Nash, who I haven't really been very impressed with, and I don't think he's really contributed very much. He was supposed to be a PK guy. Well, the PK stunk, and half the time he hasn't even been on it. He played himself off of it into the press box. But I did like that at the times that 4th line would roll out with an extra shift for Kyle Connor or an extra shift for Nikolai Ehlers. And, as those players try to get hot, I mean, Blake Wheeler's not the only guy that's struggling right now when it comes to offense. I mean, certainly there's a number of players in that case. The extra ice time and a few extra opportunities are something that I would love to see, even if they did that with the 12-6, just try to get guys going because I mean, I do think that, at a certain point, they'll get some positive momentum going forward with some goals and hopefully can build off that. But right now, it's sort of like they're in quicksand offensively right now. And I mean, I think you need to try a few different things and, hope you get a bounce or 2 and then make the most of it. But you're certainly going to have to play good defense and God knows, stay out of the box with the penalty kill the way it is right now, because there's no recipe for beating the Minnesota Wild that involves killing a bunch of penalties and not playing good defense.
Yeah, and as far as staying out of the box, like the Jets are among, I think, bottom 3rd in penalties taken, so they've definitely done a good job. At that. But again, I think the balanced line seemed to be working. You had that Svechnikov, Dubois, Connor line. It was scoring goals. So head back to that and figure out the rest. I mean, I don't think you need to figure out getting. No one's going. You don't need to focus, okay, let's get one player going. I guess they tried to get Wheeler going by putting with Dubois and Svechnikov. And, while they had chances, the results simply weren't there. So just put out the best lineup that, that optimizes everyone and puts them in a place to succeed. And, hope against Minnesota, you could do that. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm curious if everyone in chat wants to, thinks how many, what the record is going to be. I'm expecting a 1-1. Here, I think 0-2, a disappointment. You got to get at least one of the 3 here on the road trip.
1-1 right now. I would take, if you told me the team was going to win one of these next 2 games and then come back home, I think most people would take it right now because, I mean, what is certainly, this team is staring. I mean, these are very, very difficult games against good teams. We've talked about the travel. We've talked about the schedule, 3 and 4 days, all in different cities and all in different time zones. I know I hate mentioning that, but it is legitimate. This is maybe, as far as the schedule goes, a couple of the toughest games you'll have all season, especially the game against Calgary. And I'll tell you what, Remis, I mean, when you looked at this schedule overall, home game against Pittsburgh, a game against Columbus, I mean, those were the games that seemed like more winnable, and then these were going to be the real challenging ones. Well, they have nothing to show for these past few games. So figuring out a way to get 2 points out of this game tomorrow, preferably, and then see if you can continue it into Saturday is absolutely imperative, because I will tell you this, as much as I think I know some people are hitting the panic button and freaking out, and that often happens when you lose 2 games in a row, never mind 3 in a row, especially after the start that the Winnipeg Jets had. But if this team comes back, if we're going on the air on Monday afternoon when I'm back in Winnipeg talking about 5 straight losses, or I guess 6 if you want to include the OT one, against Edmonton, or the shootout one against Edmonton, You do wonder what is coming next. And, I think it would may potentially be an opportunity for a personnel change. Like I said with Ken, I would love to see a player or two from the Moose maybe get injected to the lineup and, a significant change with the way things are put together. But we just go back to that question that Ken asked about the Svechnikov Wheeler swap, and it was just such a strange answer in that, yeah, that's a possibility, and then basically said, I'm not doing it because of this, and this. So, I don't know. It's a very interesting time for the Winnipeg Jets, and this game tomorrow afternoon is going to be a great test for the hockey club, and we'll see whether they're able to bounce back and, maybe create some good fortune of their own. And if that's the case, what that might mean on the scoreboard, and certainly heading into Calgary for a very, very tough game, 9 p.m. start Saturday against the Flames. That will be on Hockey Night in Canada. Let's take a quick look at these Coolbet lines before we go. One game in the books in the National Football League, and the Raiders and Cowboys. This is really surprising to me, Reem. The line is 7.5 still with the Cowboys. And by the way, you've got just a couple minutes. If you had CeeDee Lamb in your fantasy lineup, get him out, because he did not clear concussion protocol. We were talking about yesterday with Andy. Thought that he was going to be able to get into that game, and then was ruled out earlier today. So maybe a guy like Cedric Wilson might be a good value play if you're doing a DraftKings lineup. Bottom line is Cowboys are still favored by 7.5, although it is plus money, plus 102 right now. And then later on tonight, this is a puzzling one, Reem. The Bills-Saints game opened at Bills 4.5. Yesterday it was 5.5. I'm looking at it right now. The Bills are now 7-point favorites against the Saints. I guess everyone expecting a big get-right game for the Bills, who've been really up and down over the past month.
They have been not good the last month, and the Saints have Trevor Siemian at quarterback. I know Taysom Hill comes in, so I'm kind of on the Bills. You have to think that it's going to be, as you called it, a get-right game for them, but they haven't been good. They lost to Jacksonville. The offense has kind of been sputtering. So, yeah, 7 on the road. I guess that does seem like a lot, but I don't have a lot of confidence in this New Orleans offense. Kamara's out. Mark Ingram is in, and he's been okay. It's a lot of points, but I guess I would lean the home dog there, take the points, but it doesn't feel good doing that.
No, I have a hard time backing the Saints for anything with the way that their team is right now. Quick look, we do have the lines out for the women's draw tonight in the Canadian Olympic trials. The game that I can't wait for, we'll be heading there tonight. Carrie Anerson versus Rachel Homan. Anerson, a minus 127 favorite. Slight underdog for the Homan rink at minus 105. And then the game that could blow everything up. If Laura Walker is able to beat Krista McCarville, handing her fourth loss, everything is on the table as far as potential tiebreakers, with a number of teams still with the opportunity to get to 4-4. Although Carrie, if she wins her next 2 games, could take care of that as well, be 5-3. And then we would be having Jennifer Jones, Tracy Fleury, and Carrie Anerson, a clean Manitoba sweep, and a guarantee of a Manitoba team representing Canada at the Olympics. Should be great. Again, you can get to coolbet.com. If you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST. They will give you a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. What's going on for the rest of the night, Reem?
I'm going to be watching this football. That's for sure. I got some DraftKings laps. I wanted to point out one thing. We didn't get to it. Max Domi also got fined $5,000, along with Josh Morrissey. And I know we didn't talk about it, but the Domi
for attacking Svechnikov and just dropping him?
That's a joke move to me. Just like grabbing a guy, attacking him. Then the refs holding Svechnikov and Domi's feeding him shots. What is this? What are we doing here? Is that not the dumbest?
It was garbage.
It's the dumbest.
Listen, I think he deserved the fine, and Morrissey definitely deserved the fine. Still, just stunned. If you want to talk about just, visions of frustration for the Winnipeg Jets, a guy like Josh Morrissey two-handing a player like that after an empty net goal.
He's got a record now. He's got a repeat offender, Morrissey.
Well, yeah. He had the suspension. I thought Ken made a good point. Maybe we passed the statute of limitations, and they decided that, because there's a lot of players in the league, if they did exactly what Morrissey did, they'd be getting a call from George Peros and definitely getting a game or two. So I think the Jets got lucky on that. Speaking of getting lucky, just one more thing from the game last night. They had that power play. They weren't able to score. You're wondering, what is going to be the break that finally gets things going for the Jets? And then Logan Stanley smokes one of the Blue Jackets in the head. I mean, a 6'4", a 6'7" guy, one-handing a stick into a guy's head. I mean, that's one of the most egregious missed calls I've seen in the NHL a long time. It was a huge break for the Jets not to be down for 4 minutes. And then right after that, Domi takes a dumb roughing penalty that maybe was a little iffy, and the Jets got a glorious opportunity back on the power play. But it sort of, speaks to what that game was. It was a real tough slog for the Winnipeg Jets, and no matter what opportunities they had, nothing was working and nothing was going past Elvis Merzlikins. So we'll see whether the Jets make another goaltender look like Marty Brodeur in his prime tomorrow for a 2:30 p.m. start. For everyone here, by the way, if you're with us on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button, make sure you're subscribed, and turn on your notifications because you'll get a reminder tomorrow, Reem, that we're going on early tomorrow, 11 a.m. for the show. I guess we'll talk a little bit about tomorrow's Minnesota game, but we'll talk about Jets' big picture, these two games, and especially the Calgary Flames game on the weekend, because my guy Pat Steinberg from Calgary, who does all the pre and post and does the big show in the afternoon on Sportsnet 960, is going to join us to talk about that game. I am quite looking forward to that game on Saturday night with Winnipeg and Calgary. I've watched a little bit of the Flames so far this year. They've been far better than I expected them to be, and it's a testament to what a coach instilling a message, a plan, and getting the most of his players can do, because that's pretty much the same roster as last season, minus Mark Giordano, add Blake Coleman, and they look like a completely different hockey team, Reem.
Yeah, and I crapped on them all last year when they disappointed me night after night on DraftKings, but I don't know if it's because Johnny Gaudreau is in a contract year, but he's having a great season. Andrew Mangiapane, he's got like 14 goals or something ridiculous. So
15.
Yeah, 50. I mean, Daryl Sutter's has this team playing the right way, and I thought they're gonna stink, but when you have the goaltending they're getting from Markstrom and Vladar now, who had a shutout the other day, watch out for the Flames. Maybe this is just like what we thought they were going to be last year, and this is just like a little flop lag, Huss.
Well, they were one of the most disappointing teams in the entire National Hockey League last year. And, the Jets have had a great start, but the Jets have been pretty disappointing the last week. So that, of course, is Saturday. First up, we've got to get to tomorrow's 2:30 p.m. start in the Twin Cities. Tomorrow on the program, we will talk Jets, Flames with Pat Steinberg. We'll get ready for the CFL playoffs, and we will talk about the number one team in Canadian junior hockey, the Winnipeg Ice, who are 20-1 on the season. We'll have our pal Brian Munns join the program as well. Don't forget, 11 a.m. tomorrow, special time early. We'll have it in your podcast feed for later on, and you can listen to it after the hockey game. There'll be tons of content about what's coming up on the weekend, and of course the Jets-Flames game. And other than that, folks, enjoy American Thanksgiving. Couple football games coming up. There's going to be some great curling tonight on TSN from here in Saskatoon, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk all about it at 11 a.m. before the Jets and the Wild drop the puck at 2:30. Thanks again to all of our great sponsors, Vita Health, Fresh Market. Don't forget, big Black Friday sale tomorrow from our friends at Vita Health. You can find out more at myvita.ca. Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Not Autocorp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Canadian Club, and Coolbet Canada. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks to everyone for joining us live on YouTube, everyone listening to the podcast. We'll see you tomorrow. If you're joining us live, don't forget, early 11 a.m. before Jets Wild, right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.